Checked your answering machine lately? As time goes on, all things fade away. Buildings, bones, the very land we stand upon, but words remain, intent remains, and history forever remains. Number 10. Pompeii graffiti. What do Romans and Zoomers have in common? Probably their love for weird and semi-unfunny memes. Yes, even thousands of years in the past, people were leaving all sorts of tasteful messages on the walls for all to see. Insults, compliments, but more interestingly, threats. Most of these are obviously jovial in nature, but there is one that does stand out as interesting. The message reads, "To the one defecating here, beware of the curse. If you look down on this curse, may you have an angry Jupiter for an enemy." Seems silly enough, right? Well, it is, until you learn that it was found at Pompeii, the city buried by a volcano. Sounds like a fairly wrathful act, eh? Seems like Jupiter was being a bit of a party pooper. Number 9. Hans Holbein's The Ambassadors. Hans Holbein is a classic artist, but one of his most famous works stands out as a grim omen. In 1533, Holbein would be commissioned to portray ambassadors Jean de Dinfy of France and Georges de Sèvres of Lavaur. This work is an excellent piece, but it includes an enigmatic secret, a strangely proportioned skull. There are numbers of theories as to why this was included, one of the most popular coming from Oscar Bachmann and Pascal Grenier, who suggest that the skull is meant to contrast the beauty and value found within life against the grandeur of death. Holbein would pass almost exactly 1 decade later, which arguably completes the implication of this message in its entirety. Number 8. The Voyager messages. The Voyager deep space program helped NASA further its understanding of the solar system with absolutely breathtaking images of the universe that were sent back to Earth. However, those messages weren't the only thing that the Voyagers were meant to carry. Inside each probe is a golden phonograph disc titled The Sounds of Earth, which include several greetings, sounds of whales, a crying baby, waves on a shoreline, music from a scatterplot of important musicians from around the world, and greetings in around 55 different languages. While this seems like a friendly handshake from one part of the universe to another, the question must be asked, what will find this disc? What will they think of us? And what will they do next? The Voyagers are still out there, and they are expected to no longer be able to transmit anything to us in roughly around 2036. Which probably means that if anything does find them, we won't be getting a warning until they're here. Number 7. The Mayan calendar. Portents of doom are common enough in history. However, 2012 was an interesting year for such fears, as the turn of a new millennium caused a number of people to become absolutely certain that the world would end. To justify their claims, they looked to the past, and one message seemed to leave people more certain than others. Now, let's be clear, the Mayans didn't actually make this calendar. That would have to be attributed to the early Mesoamericans, who termed the end of a period of the time as the Baktun. Baktun 13 was the end of a particularly large period, and when lined up with our calendar, it matched up alongside the date of December 2012. So, was the message true? It was fun at the time, but after the date passed, the real horror was revealed as people admitted to selling their possessions and homes with the expectation that they just wouldn't need them anymore. all because of a calendar period ending in a way that most computer technicians would just describe as stack overflow. Like, your car doesn't explode when you max out the mileage counter, it just resets to 0. So the terror here was more that people actually believed this crap, just because the Mesoamericans didn't make a Baktun 14. Jeez. Number 6. Qin Shi Huang's meteor. So in 211 BC, the Qin dynasty was in full swing and everyone was having a great time, suffering under the rule of their tyrannical overlord Qin Shi Huang. Suddenly, a meteor fell from the sky, landing in the province of Dongjun. Upon inspection, the meteor was revealed to have been inscribed with the words, "The first emperor will die, and his land will be divided." Whether or not this was an elaborate hoax or not, the emperor was paranoid enough to demand that the writer come forward, and when no one did, he had everyone who lived in the area executed. The funny thing is, a year later it came true. Qin Shi Huang died, and while China remained somewhat unified, the Qin dynasty fell only 3 years later. And soon after that, the Han dynasty took over, ending the Qin dynasty's short reign. Unfortunately, the meteor was shattered, so this brilliant moment has been permanently lost to time.
In our number 5 spot today, we have the music. This story starts off with the storyteller explaining to us that his grandfather, who was born in the 1920s, had recently passed away. The day of his passing, the storyteller's mom, so the late grandfather's daughter, tried to call her husband. When she called though, and the other line picked up, all she heard was music. It was old music, like from the 40s or 50s, and although this storyteller is from Belgium, the music had an English-speaking singer, and the sound was gritty, almost like it was being played off of a record player. This was quite significant because the family knew that the grandfather had a record player that was quite important to him. The two of them listened to the music for a few seconds before hanging up to try calling again. This time, the call went through, and her husband was on the other line. They end off the story by saying, quote, "We never had a similar problem with our cell phones before, and we both saw on the cell phone screen my dad's number was being called." What do you guys think? A technical error is most likely in my opinion, but the fact that it never happened before, the weird choice of music, and the day it happened on gives me doubts. So I pass the question on to you guys. What do you think happened here? In our number 4 spot today, we have The Whisper. So this is a story that comes from someone who goes by the username JubyLove, and it doesn't start off with someone close to Juby passing away or anything like that. It simply just starts off with them trying to get a hold of their mother. They say, quote, "I called her cell and it picked up after the first ring. At first it just sounds like static. I kept saying hello, expecting a reply, but there was nothing. After a few hellos, I realized it sounded like someone whispering. I said hello again, waiting for a reply, thinking it was the radio in her car. Still no reply. The whispering got louder. It sounded like a woman whispering 'help me' repeatedly. This freaked me out. I thought maybe they got in an accident and my mom was pinned or badly hurt and couldn't speak, so I am freaking out. I hung up and kept calling back. A few calls later, my mom answered. She swore she never picked up because she had no service until that point. I'm still a little spooked. Honestly, I wouldn't even know what to make of that. Was someone from the other side trying to contact them? Was it some sort of glitch in the Matrix? At this point, it remains one creepy mystery. In our number 3 spot today, we have The Medium. This story comes from someone online who goes by the name I Want to Believe, and they talk about how they started getting signs from their friend who had recently passed away. They explained that the signs came in the form of their favorite songs playing on the radio, despite them not being songs that would normally air. There were things in the house, like this example they explain, quote, "He used to put pennies on heads in the corners of his room as a silly good luck thing. I started finding pennies on heads in the corners of my room." They go on to tell us that they started seeing a therapist to help them navigate their grief, and this therapist referred them to a medium. They explain their experience at the medium by saying, quote, "He said my friend had come through to speak to me. I knew it was my friend coming through because the medium told me things about him that no one could know or research, including very private things about how he was found, etc. He told me that he loved me and would be around around for me and help me with my struggles. The medium told me that he plays songs on the radio for me, which I noticed before I even went to the medium. The medium even said that my friend knows I have noticed the things he does for me. In our number 2 spot today, we have 2 dreams. This story comes from someone who goes by the username Dugans, and they wrote, quote, "When my grandfather passed away, my mother and I just moved into our new home. Within a week of his passing, I had a dream that the phone rings and it's him on the other line. He says, 'Hey Heather, do you know who this is?' I didn't know what to say because it sounded like him, but I knew in my dream that he had passed away. He just laughs and says, 'I don't have much time. Can I speak to your mom?' And I say, 'Of course,' and run into the room to give my mom the phone, but I dropped it and it got disconnected. The next day I tell my mom about it and she gets a serious look and tells me that he called her in her dream and said, 'I don't have much time, I need you to turn off Heather's heater.' She wakes up and goes into my room and the heater is shooting flames out of it. The heater was an old plug-in one that was his and I used it every night, pointing it at my bed when I went to sleep." In our number 1 spot today, we have Wednesday. This story is from someone who goes by the username Summerfield85, and they say, quote, "My mom passed away on a Tuesday. On Wednesday, I was home alone when the phone rang. When I picked up the phone, I distinctly heard my mom's voice saying, 'Lo? Lo?' I said, 'Mom?' Then they disconnected. Lo is a nickname that my mom used for me. She was the only person who called me that, and it was very definitely in her New York accent, her timbre, her voice. There were other phenomena in the 2 weeks following. Items related to my mom flew across the room twice. One of those, a bracelet, happened in front of 2 people. Honestly, I wouldn't know what to make of that. Part of it I feel like would be so comforting, but like part of that would be absolutely terrible. Like great, now my mom's not grounding me, she's just my poltergeist."
Starting us off at number 10 is automatic writing. So I just discovered this today and thought it belonged on the list as well. Now psychography or automatic writing is when a clairvoyant or psychic person has the ability to write down words without consciously doing it. The person sort of goes into a trance while a ghost, spirit or demon enters their body and writes down whatever they're trying to get heard. These automatic messages can come in the form of a Ouija board as well. That is, you know, an entity trying to speak to you. Well-known Swiss medium Helene Smith famously wrote down a series of phrases in Martian, but I highly doubt that. It's a lot more plausible for Helene to have had an evil spirit inside her automatically just writing those letters rather than a Martian. Yes, the letters are unrecognizable, but it kind of looks more like pagan satanic lettering than it does alien code. And of course we have no idea what the message means, so for all we know it could be like, oh, the world's ending. And everyone's like, ah, yes. Coming in at number 9 is the devil. This one was shared by Reddit user BR Whoop, who said that grandma has completely banned Ouija boards from her house due to one incident that scarred her growing up. Honestly, if I was a grandma, I wouldn't need any incident to ban them from my house. I would just be like, that's not coming in here. I haven't got long to live. I'm not trying to get possessed or anything before I go. Now when she was younger, her and her friends decided to mess with the Ouija board, and after asking who they were talking to, the planchette spells out Satan. Now usually demons and evil entities like that are very conniving and will manipulate the out of you before actually telling you who they are. In this instance, Satan literally wasn't even playing, he was direct and was like, "It is I, Satan." Now at that point I would have been like that SpongeBob meme where it's like, I'ma head out. Nah, like that's not me. After the revelation, the friend whose board it was started convulsing and foaming at the mouth for 10 straight minutes before stopping. At number 8 we have the uncle. This one's from Ashley Elaine, who said when she was 15 her grandma asked her to use a Ouija board so they could try and contact her uncle who had died at birth. Now initially it did seem like they were speaking to the uncle, it was spelling out all the right answers to their questions, so it seemed pretty legit. But after a while the personality of the entity changed and got darker somehow. It started getting cruel, possessive, and eventually spelled out that it had her uncle and was coming for her next. As soon as it moved to the last letter, Ashley blacked out for a full minute. When she woke up, all the light bulbs in her house had exploded and there was glass everywhere. That was definitely not her uncle who she was speaking to. That kind of manipulation and deceit can only come from demons. We know this by now. How many demon videos have I done? I'm basically a demonologist, you guys. Hire me. Filling our number 7 slot are the texts. So back in July of 2014, Polish priest Father Marian Radchel claimed an evil spirit was mad at him post-exorcism, so he started harassing him by sending him hateful text messages. Didn't know demons knew how to text, but wow, I guess they're really evolving too, getting real tech savvy. Now Father Marian would get texts like, "Shut up preacher, you cannot save yourself, idiot, you pathetic old preacher," and "She will not come out of this hell, she's mine, anyone who prays for her will die." Father Marian knows that a human obviously sent the text, but the girl is still possessed by the demon he tried so hard to expel, so I mean, next he's just gonna get an Instagram account and then a Twitter account and then harass the world. You know? I'm just thinking bigger picture here, macro level. Now at number 6 is The Mirror. This is from a now deleted Reddit user who lost their mother to schizophrenia and what appeared to be demonic possession. Now just to clarify, back in the day a lot of doctors thought people with schizophrenia were possessed since they didn't know what schizophrenia was. But this woman was clinically diagnosed with schizophrenia, but it seemed on top of that there was some kind of demon possession going on. The girl's mum would get into strange random fits and become erratically abusive towards the daughter, and then 5 minutes later she'd be fine and not remember what just happened. The weird part was that the mum was only abusive to the user, not her siblings, which didn't make any sense. No one knew why she was targeting her, but after her death it didn't exactly stop. One night the user was taking a hot shower, but partway through the water got freezing cold for a split second. Now we've all had showers. When it goes from hot to cold, it takes a while to like get there and then go back. It doesn't just go hot, cold, hot. You know what I mean? Hello. Shower Physics 101. Now when she finally finished, she stepped onto the mat outside and saw something written in the steam on the mirror. It said, "She may be dead, but I'm still coming for you."
Number 4. I'll tell you later when you call me, I'm so heated. On April 25th, 2009, Brittany Drexel sent a concerning message to her boyfriend moments before she went missing on a spring break trip in Myrtle Beach. "I'll tell you later when you call me, I'm so heated," Brittany wrote in one message. In the hour before she vanished, she also texted with her friend about a pair of shorts she borrowed and made plans to meet at the hotel to return them. While Brittany does not respond to the messages, the documents show that her cell phone continued to ping off cell towers in different locations before dying at 11:57 p.m. Now her body was found in early 2022 and Raymond Douglas Moody pleaded guilty to her kidnapping, taking advantage and ending her life. Raymond alleged that Brittany voluntarily got into a car with him and his ex-girlfriend on the night of April 25th. The trio then drove to a campground where he flew into a rage and ended the life of Brittany. Number 3. No, I need the cops. In 2013, Brandon Lawson was living with his longtime girlfriend and their 4 children. One night, Brandon didn't come home on the night of August 7th. This led to an argument with Ledessa, his girlfriend, on the evening of August 8th. He had dealt with issues in the past and had recently relapsed, so Brandon staying out all night was a cause for concern. At around 11:53 p.m., Brandon grabbed his cell phone, a charger, his keys, and his wallet and left with his pickup truck low on gas. At 12:38 a.m., he called his brother Kyle and said he'd run out of gas on Highway 277, not far from Bronte. Kyle and his girlfriend Audrey left to go get him gas. At 12:48 a.m., Brandon tried to call Ledessa again but got no response. At 12:54 a.m., Brandon made a discerning 911 call. Parts of the 43-second call were unintelligible. Brandon spoke of running out of gas and being in a field. He said he accidentally ran into some people before there was background noise that may have. The operator asked Brandon if he needed an ambulance. Amid intermittent background noise, Brandon first replied in the affirmative, but then changed his mind and said, "No, I need the cops." Now, Brandon did not respond to the operator after this, though the identified background noises seemed to get closer to him before the call ended. At 1:10 a.m., Kyle and Audrey found Brandon's truck. They called Brandon and managed to reach him one last time. Brandon said he was 10 minutes into the field and bleeding and implored his brother to get him quickly. The call ended and Brandon responded to no further calls or texts. Now, multiple searches for Brandon yielded nothing, and neither his bank account nor his cell phone showed any activity after that night. Number 2. No service in Yosemite. Gabby Petito and Brandon Laurie were fiancés traveling together on a van life journey across the United States. The trip was planned to last 4 months and began on July 2nd, 2021, but Gabby disappeared on August 27th. On August 27th, a text from her phone was sent to her mother, which read, "Can you help Stan? I just keep getting his voicemails and missed calls." Now, the message raised concerns because her mother said that Stan was her grandfather and that she never referred to him by his first name. The last
last message, sent on August 30th, simply said no service in Yosemite. Her mother expressed uncertainty about who sent these messages. Now, after Gabby's disappearance, Brian raised suspicion when he drove the van from Wyoming back to his parents' Florida home and refused to discuss her whereabouts. He was deemed a person of interest in the case, and an arrest warrant was issued on charges of him making withdrawals using her debit card. He then left his home on September 13th and was reported missing 4 days later. On September 19th, Gabby's remains were found in Wyoming's Bridgerton's National Forest. An autopsy found that she died by manual strangulation, and after months of speculation around Brian's whereabouts and an extended search of the area around his home, his skeletal remains were discovered in a Florida park on October 20th. It was confirmed by an autopsy on November 23rd that Brian had died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound in the head, and the FBI later announced that he had admitted to ending Gabby's life in his notebook, which was found near his remains. And coming in at number 1, if I die, it may not be an accident. Susan Powell was reported missing in December 2009 when her and her family was living in West Valley City, Utah. That night, her husband Josh Powell claimed to have gone on a camping trip in the middle of the night with their sons. Susan, he said, stayed home because she felt tired. As soon as I heard he was back and Susan was not with him, I instantly said to myself, what has he done? Christy Helswell, Susan's friend said. Susan would have never allowed him to ever take the boys out in the winter to the desert in the middle of the night. Never. I never believed his story at all. Now, at the bank in which she worked, inside a safe deposit box that belonged to her, investigators discovered a handwritten will and testament. In the will, Susan had written about how bad her marriage had become and that Josh had taken out a $1 million life insurance policy on her. If I die, her note said, it may not be an accident. This is our biggest piece of evidence, said the police. It's our last words. There was no doubt this document was authored by Susan. Authorities also determined that Josh had filed paperwork to withdraw money from her retirement account about 10 days after she disappeared. At the time of her disappearance, Susan's close friends said her marriage had been in turmoil for years and that she had even seen a divorce lawyer. In February 2012, Josh ended his own life in a house explosion during a supervised visit. Josh locked out the social worker from the home upon their arrival. Since then, Susan's case has run cold.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the email. Okay, so this story starts out in 2011 when a man named Jack passed away quite suddenly. Of course, this meant that his friends and family began to grieve Jack and do all of the things that come with having someone close to you pass away. But 5 months after Jack's death, something really spooky happened. At this time, Jack's best friend, Tim Hart, received an email from Jack's account that just had the subject line, I'm watching. Of course, Tim explains that he immediately went white like a ghost because what in the world? Of course, he opened the email and read it, and he said, quote, it was very quick and short, but to a point that only Jack and I could relate on. Inside the email it said, quote, do you hear me? I'm at your house. Clean your effing attic. Shortly before Jack died, apparently the two had been in Tim's attic talking about what to do with the space. Exactly what happened with this email is the source of much mystery, as Jack's friends and family say that no one had his password and they don't think that the account was hacked. Tim asked Jack's mother about it as he thought maybe she had something to do with this mysterious email, but she just said, quote, think what you want about it or accept it as a gift. In our number 9 spot today, we have the voicemail. This story comes from someone who goes by the username Midwayer, and they start off with some important backstory. They wrote, quote, my grandmother lives alone in an old house that my mother and her 2 sisters grew up in. When they were children, the house was supposedly haunted by spirits. My mother was haunted by a voice that would call her name Judy from the bathroom, while her sister Gina would speak in tongues at times. It got to the point where they had a priest come in and cleanse the house. Other than a few odd occurrences, there was nothing too major, and it happened so long ago that it doesn't concern my family anymore. Okay, that's quite the backstory, but anyways, they continue on to say that one day they get a call from their mother asking if they were trying to prank her by leaving a creepy voicemail. She didn't, so she asks her mother who the last person who called her was, and they see the last 2 calls were from her grandmother. The grandmother also denied leaving any sort of message, so at this point no one has any idea who left the message or really where it came from. They then go on to explain the message, saying, quote, the message was not staticky but seemed more glitchy, but there was a dominant low voice that seems to say my mother's name slowly, like Judy. It's 50 seconds long and it repeats. Every time I listen to it, I get shivers down my back. In our number 8 spot today we have 2 years later. Cassie Woods is a woman who in 2011 was completely freaked out when she received an email from her mother who had passed away 2 years prior. I mean, I can't even imagine the complete confusion that would bring for the first few seconds. Cassie explained that she was pretty hysterical when the email arrived. She said she saw it and just kind of collapsed to the floor. Unfortunately, the email would turn out to be one that was sent as a result of someone having hacked the email account that belonged to her late mother. Rather than a message from beyond the grave, this one turned out to be very from this realm. Has anything like this ever happened to you guys? In our number 7 spot today we have The Call. This story is from someone who goes by the name Waits the Great, and they start off by explaining that their aunt passed away from some chronic illnesses that she had been struggling with. She then goes on to say, quote, "She was in her 50s and both of her parents outlived her. So one morning around 7 a.m. my grandma, aunt's mother, gets a phone call. The caller ID said it was my aunt calling. When she was alive, that was the normal time for her to call almost every day. My grandma answered and could only hear static, but she stayed on the line repeating her daughter's name until the call was disconnected on the other side." Honestly, I don't know how this could have happened besides some sort of supernatural explanation. Maybe she just wanted one last phone call before she headed on her way. In our number 6 spot today we have The Reply. So it's pretty common after someone passes away that their family continues to send text messages to the number that they once had. What's not common, however, is to receive a reply. That is exactly what happened to Sherry Emerson, who was used to sending text messages to her late grandmother's phone number. Upon sending a text one day, she received a reply that read, quote, "I'm watching over you, you'll get through this, and you'll be alright." Considering the fact that this was 3 years after her grandmother passed away, Sherry was completely shocked that she received a response, and of course she began to freak out. She said, quote, "I felt sick when I read it. I was in shock. I didn't know what to think. I'd sent a message on Wednesday night telling her about family life, and then I got the reply on Thursday. Obviously we know that Nan wasn't going to ever reply. It was just something that we did to comfort for ourselves because she loved to text. So you can imagine what I was thinking seeing a message flash up from her." She then called the number and the person on the other line answered and they confessed. As it turns out, rather than some sort of message from the other side, it just turns out that the phone number that Sherry's grandmother had previously had been given to another customer after it hadn't been used in 3 years.
Next up at number 5 now we have Howard Storm. At the age of 38, Howard was an atheist. He also had a perforated stomach which led to a near-death experience. He woke up outside of his body and saw people around his hospital bed, but they couldn't hear him speak. He kept moving and found people walking towards him. However, when he tried to stop them to ask a question, they just walked right through him. It was then that he realized he was a ghost. Then he saw a group of people huddled around a door leading to a hallway. For some reason, these people could see him. Not only that, they were trying to tell him something. As he moved towards them, he saw they were urging him to follow them. Reluctantly, he agreed and stepped out into the hallway. Almost instantly, he was enveloped in a thick fog. He continued to follow the figures through this fog. They pestered him to keep up. As the hospital disappeared behind him, the figures turned nasty, shoving and pushing him. Eventually, they revealed themselves to be demons. They turned on him and tried to eat his flesh. Despite being an atheist, he prayed to God. To his amazement, it worked. When he came around the hospital, he vowed to become a Christian. Eventually, he went on to become a church minister and pastor. His story has become famous among those interested in near-death experiences. Next up at number 4 now, we have Matthew Botsford. This man claimed that in 1992, he went to hell and back. He and 2 work associates were in Atlanta on business. They had just left a restaurant and had gone outside to catch a taxi when, behind them, a group of men were arguing. 3 of them pulled out guns and started shooting. One of Matthew's friends were unharmed, 1 took a bullet to the head and died instantly, and as for Matthew, he also took a bullet to the head and died. What happened next, Matthew finds hard to describe. "Utter blackness," he said, "incredible fear. I went to a place that I believe was hell. It was void of anything good, beyond anything words could describe. This hand came down towards me, and as it did, it brought warmth, just flooding this room I was in with this brilliant white light. I was being pulled upwards. I heard this voice say, 'It's not your time.'" Matthew was resuscitated on the scene. He was in a coma for 27 days in hospital and flatlined a number of times, but amazingly, he survived. Eventually, he was even able to walk without the aid of a wheelchair or cane. He and his wife started to go to church, with Matthew attributing his survival to God. He said, "When I was dead, I didn't cry out for God. yet he came down with his own hand and pulled me out of hell. That's a loving God. Moving on to number 3 now, we have Jennifer Perez. In May 1997, this woman nearly died after a group of friends drugged her drink and attempted to sexually assault her. Perez was hospitalized for 3 days, slipping in and out of consciousness. One time she claimed she floated out of her body. After a visit to heaven, she says she saw hell. She was standing on a great road and didn't know where it would lead to. The first thing she felt though was thirst. She told the angel who was guiding her, but he didn't hear her. She started to cry. The tears evaporated instantly. Then there was the smell of sulfur, like a million burning tires. She tried to cover her nose, but that made it even worse. Her senses were heightened. Even covering herself up seemed to do nothing. The heat burned the hair off her arms. Eventually, she saw people being tortured by demons, but could do nothing to save them. After this glimpse of hell, she was led back to heaven, where she says God gave her a second chance at life. Moving on to number 2 now, we have George Ritchie. Now he died of pneumonia in 1943 during World War II. He awoke to find himself in what looked like a hospital room. It looked like the hospital room he had been moved to for his treatment, but something was different. He noticed that all of his belongings were no longer in the room. What was even stranger though was that someone else was in his bed, the same bed that he had just got up from. He felt compelled to find out what was going on and knew the answers lied beyond this room. He stepped into the hospital hallway and followed it to a set of metal doors that led outside. He felt like he had to go to his hometown of Richmond, Virginia. He decided he was going to run there. He ran faster than humanly possible and eventually stopped in a small town. There was an old red cafe with a neon sign in the window. He found himself floating 50 feet above the building. A man below tried to enter the building. George tried to touch his shoulder, but his hand moved right through him as if it was made out of air. It was then that it hit him. He was dead, and the stranger in the hospital bed was actually him. He rushed back to the hospital and stood beside his body. Then he claims Jesus appeared. Jesus took him on a tour of different afterlives. Some looked like places on earth, some looked like nothing he could even imagine. He saw infinite souls battling on a huge plane, mutilating each other beyond belief, but suffering no physical injuries, only the pain that would normally come with them. And finally, number 1 now, we have Tamara LaRue. In September 1985, this 15-year-old girl attempted suicide by shooting herself in the chest. As soon as the shot went off, she found herself in a fiery pit. Hundreds of souls were screaming in agony, unable to talk to one another. She saw a creature with a dragon-like head, which she described as more fierce than anything that the earth has ever seen. Then a shining hand descended and carried her up to heaven before guiding her back down to home again. When she awoke, the medical team told her that the bullet had missed her heart by 1/4 of an inch. Tamara dedicated her life to teaching others about her experience and how to avoid it.
They're after me more than one. Mike McLean spent the evening of April 20th, 2019 at the Tropical Lounge nightclub in New Hampshire with his friends. That night, a dispute occurred between 2 women at the club. They stepped outside, at which point the situation escalated. A crowd formed and Mike, who knew one of the women, broke the fight up, but the police had been called. They dispersed the onlookers, and it was at that point that Mike's friends lost track of him. A bit before 2 a.m. the next morning, Mike called his boss and said, "They're after me more than one." This ominous statement prompted her to call him back, but there was no answer. It's believed that he left the nightclub on foot, and his phone was last pinged at a McDonald's a few blocks down the street from the club at around the time he called his boss, but there are few clues for investigators to go on. His credit cards have shown known activity, and he hasn't been seen since. Number 9. I'm scared. Never mind. On June 21st, 2013, Brooklyn Farthing, her younger sister Paige, and cousin went to a birthday party in a field. Paige and Brooklyn's cousin decided to leave the party early on, since she had made plans to sleep over at a home of a friend who was also at the party. However, when Brooklyn's friend decided she wanted to spend the night at a boy's house, the two argued and the friend left. Towards the end of the party, Brooklyn was seen leaving with 2 young men. One of the men was dropped off, and the other man took Brooklyn to his house. It was at around 4 a.m. on June 22nd that Brooklyn called Paige and asked if their cousin could come pick her up. However, the cousin had had too many drinks and was in no condition to drive. Now, Brooklyn didn't want her mother to have to come get her, so she called her ex-boyfriend. He agreed to give her a ride home when he got off work, and it was at this point the man who brought Brooklyn to the house left. Now, before long, Brooklyn's ex-boyfriend received several texts from her: "Can you hurry? Please hurry," and then "I'm scared." However, another text came in telling the ex never mind, and that Brooklyn was going to another party. He asked who she was going with, but there was no response, and Brooklyn hasn't been heard from since. Number 8. Things are gonna get better. Enrique Medel began to fall in with the wrong crowd growing up. Enrique, then 13, began to hang out with a teenager named Andy who was around 6 years older than him. His mother Olivia had a bad feeling about Andy, but now that she was working full-time, she couldn't keep an eye on her son at all times. Sometimes Enrique would disappear in the middle of the night. Eventually, he was expelled from school for having a weapon. Olivia believes the firearm was Andy's idea. And then on March 16, 2011, Enrique, now 14, spoke to his mother and said, "Mom, I know you're going through a hard time, but things are going to get better." Then Olivia never saw her son again. Enrique's uncle spotted him that night outside a convenience store and had told him to go home, but the latter said he was going to stay with some friends. He stopped answering his phone later that night and has been missing ever since. Number 7. I'll be back. On January 13, 1980, park ranger Paul Fugate disappeared in what should have been a routine hike in Arizona's Chiricahua National Monument. Paul, who was last seen heading out to do a trail check around 2 p.m., told a coworker that they could start closing duties without him if he wasn't back by 4:30 p.m. He was then seen starting down the trailhead, and that was the last any person spoke to him or saw him. Now his girlfriend alerted authorities, who undertook a search for him. They first assumed that he had been the victim of an accident and was injured or stranded in the backcountry. However, as the investigation continued and no trace was found, suspicions began to rise. One park volunteer came forward to say that he'd seen Paul in a truck with 2 strange men, leading some to wonder if he had been kidnapped. Or some proposed that he may have simply ditched his old life. Whatever the truth, no trace of Paul has ever been found since that day in 1980. To make things more difficult, Chiricahua has 17 square miles of canyons, treacherous terrain, and wildlands. The search and rescue teams have found absolutely nothing related to the park ranger. Number 6. Please call my husband when my body is found. One day, Geraldine Largay left a trail to use the bathroom and got lost. She knew the chances of her making it out of the thick Maine woods were slim, so she had been writing in her journal every day, and one of her final entries showed that she was resigned to her fate. When you find my body, please call my husband George and my daughter Carrie. It will be the greatest kindness for them to know that I am dead and where you found me, no matter how many years from now. Please find it in your heart to mail the contents of this bag to one of them. Then her body was found more than 2 years later in a sleeping bag inside a zipped up tent. Text and journal entries revealed that she was alive for almost a month after she went missing. She tried on July 22nd to text her husband, who was meeting her at certain points along the almost 2,200-mile long trail, to get help, but the text didn't go through. She walked west and kept trying to send the message. 10 more attempts, the last one at 12:25 p.m., and she tried another message the next day, writing "lost since yesterday, off trail 3 or 4 miles, call police for what to do please XOX. It also failed, but she tried one more time with no avail. By this time, she had set up her tent nearly 2 miles from the trail. She had some food, water, and her camping supplies, and the journal that she wrote in each day. There were entries through August 10th, then nothing until the 18th. It was the last entry 27 days later after she got lost. Number 5. I just want to talk while I have the chance. On August 9th, 2018, Matthew Weaver told his father that he was going out with a new female acquaintance. Matthew picked her up around 9:30 p.m. and dropped her off during the early morning hours of August 10th. Matthew then drove to an area in the Santa Monica Mountains. Near sunrise, he posted a Snapchat picture of a scenic view and is believed to have entered a hiking trail. A few hours later, Matthew's female friend received some strange messages. They read, "Like some crazy shh is going on, and I just want to talk while I have the chance." There was no further communication from Matthew. Now, Matthew's last known location, according to Snapchat and cell phone records, was near the Roses Outlook. At 1:30 a.m. on August 11th, several hikers in the area called 911 after hearing cries for help. Around that time, California Highway Patrol officers reportedly heard screams and possibly someone yelling, "He's got a..." Matthew's car was found near a hiking trail, but the keys weren't located until January 2019, when hikers found them a mere 25 feet from where the car had been. That same month, high-resolution drone photos of the area enabled Matthew's family to find a baseball cap and torn t-shirt they believe were Matthew's. Now, despite these strange clues, Matthew remains missing.
Coming in at number 5 is Satan's Code. Now, I've mentioned this story in a previous video, but it was such a literal example of this list, I was like, I gotta include it. Now, back in August of 1676, a 31-year-old Sister Maria Crucifessa de la Concisione was found laying down on the floor in her cell. Her face was covered in ink for some reason, and she was found holding a letter written in a code that took centuries to decipher. Maria said the devil wrote the letter to try and get her to stray away from God, as all devils do. The letter featured featured 14 lines of coded text and translated to this: God thinks he can free mortals. The system works for no one. Perhaps now Styx is certain. Now first of all, what is God trying to free us from? Life? You literally put us here to begin with. Just, you can fix it. Like, I don't get it. Also, just to explain for some backstory, in Roman and Greek mythology, the river Styx separates the living world from the netherworld. Maybe it meant free us from death, so we'd never have to die, which would technically make the river useless. So, because God can't free us, the river is certain? That's my take on it. I don't know. It's open to interpretation. And number 4 is Upside Down. This one came from psychic medium J. David, who relayed the story of this boy called Eric. Now Eric had been playing around with the Ouija board, so Jay had been called to his house to sort of cleanse it. He felt this dark presence and energy in the house, but couldn't really pinpoint what it was until he met the dad, who is an alcoholic. When he interviewed Eric later on, all he really said was that the demon had spelled out that his name was Lucifer, and then would continuously spell out the words upside down. All seemed like it had been cleared, so Jay left the home and the family to live happily ever after. However, things went tits up when a week later Eric's mum called saying he had been locked inside his bedroom. When Jay got there, the dad was drunk, shouting threats at the boy, and so Jay was like, okay, I need to get this dad out of the situation right now. He ended up alone outside the door, and Eric opened it crying and just said upside down and pointed to the window. Confused, Jay rushed to the window to see the family dog who had been buried upside down, tail in the air, face in the ground. Filling at number 3 slot is Stab. This one comes from Redditor Ouija 1993, who said this happened back in the 90s. Her and her friends were in year 9 at the time, and during a sleepover they decided to play with the Ouija board and try and communicate with whatever entity was present, you know? Because that's what you do. I watch movies at sleepovers, but girls in the 90s did other things, even though I also am a 90s kid, so either way, the girl started talking to a Roger, who was not a nice entity. He kept spelling out bitch, referring to one of the girls, and it looked like he really hated her for reasons unknown. And keep in mind, demons are known to lie about literally everything. I doubt Roger was its real name. It's probably Asmodai or something, but that's obviously harder to spell. Roger then started spelling out the word stab over and over again, and the last word it spelled out was kill before the girls decided it was time to stop playing with Roger. Now, I'm no genius, but I'm guessing he wanted to stab the annoying friend. Now, at number 2 is Cindy. Now, Cindy was a 13-year-old girl, the middle child of 6 kids from a very devout Christian family that lived in northern Maine. Now, while she was in the 8th grade, one of her friends let her borrow their Ouija board, and so that night Cindy and her sisters started asking it questions. After they were done, there was something about the board Cindy just couldn't stop thinking about. She started becoming obsessed and making a list of questions she wanted to ask the entity every day. There was 1 hour after school where Cindy was the only one home, so every night she started using the Ouija board. The planchette spelled out hi and that its name was Jake. What is it with demons and adopting really basic names? Like, I'm Jake, I'm a Roger. Like, how do you go from Beelzebub to Jake? Anywho, the name was freaky as hell considering she had a friend called Jake who had died in a car crash when he was in 4th grade. She then asked if it was really him, to which the board spelled out yes. The two continued talking for the next few days, but the conversation started getting darker and angrier, and Cindy realized she wasn't talking to Jake. No Cindy. 2 weeks later, the entity finally spelled out that it was a demon and that if she told anyone, it would kill her. That night, the family found Cindy in the corner of her room crying, and she was later admitted to a mental facility to recover from all the psychological damage she underwent. And finally, at number 1 is The Helper. This one is utterly wild. Like, damn, hell really hath no fury like a woman scorned. And it kind of reminded me of Desperate Housewives for some reason. Either way, back in 1935, a woman started consulting this Ouija board every week about her relationship with her husband. Now, during these entity consultations, if you will, the board kept spelling out that her husband was having an affair with their neighbor and that he had also apparently given this woman a lot of money. After every consultation, this girl would just give her husband a death glare and soon started torturing him. Weeks later, she tied him to the bedpost with wires and whipped his body with knotted ropes. And this man was 78 years old, like this poor old man. She also used a burning poker to brand him and used a knife to stab both his shins. It was only when she put a gun to his head that he confessed to everything she wanted to hear just so he could be free. Satisfied, she put the gun on the nightstand, and at this point, fearing for his life, the husband grabbed the gun and shot his wife 4 times in the back, killing her. He didn't go to jail since it was a a justifiable homicide, which I kind of agree with, and we actually have no clue whether he was cheating or not, or if a demon was saying all these things to her just to poison her mind and turn her crazy. Wow. Still haven't played it with the Ouija board, still never will. Still never spoken to the supernatural. Would be open to it, but would rather not.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have Angie Fenimore. In 1991, she attempted suicide and experienced a life review. Basically, her life unfolded before her eyes, but from the point of view of the people that she knew. She got to experience how those interactions with them made them feel. After that, she remembers being surrounded in an eternal darkness. She saw a group of people nearby and realized she was among others who had committed suicide. She tried to communicate with the others with her mind, but no matter how hard she tried, she was unable to. After a while, she was transferred to another part of hell. This part looked a bit like a field. Lost souls roamed around it. These souls were able to communicate with each other, but they actually refused to. Angie said they were too immersed in their own misery to interact with each other. Never mind Angie. She was sucked into another part of hell and landed on the edge of a shadowy realm, suspended in darkness. She continued to be moved to different parts of hell, seeing more forlorn and lost souls. Then she said God spoke to her through the darkness. He asked her if this is what she really wanted. When she said her life is so hard, God replied, "It is nothing compared to what awaits you if you take your life." What do you guys make of this story? Some religious people use this story as proof of the existence of heaven, hell and God. Next up at number 9 now, we have Zushiba. She was a Reddit user who shared a story about her aunt who died while undergoing an operation. She said she floated above her body on the operating table and saw them trying to revive her. She felt a pull on her and flew out to the top of the room. Suddenly she found herself floating above the ground several inches above a field of dirt. In front of her was a deep dark chasm. On the other side was a beautiful field of grass flowers and sunlight. Where she was only had brown dirt. She began to hover over the chasm and felt an evil force pulling her down into it. She said it was the worst feeling of pain and horror she had ever experienced. After what felt like an eternity, the hands that were pulling her down went away. She felt happy and warm. She saw family members on the other side. She moved towards them, but suddenly she felt the same hands pull at her again, this time even harder. Again the hands came and so did the cold. Suddenly there was only darkness. Again she was on the ceiling of her room and saw her body below spasm violently. She heard the doctor say, "She's back," and suddenly it was dark. When she woke up, she told her family about her brush with hell and how she never wanted to be pulled down by those hands when the time really came. Moving on to number 8 now, we have Father Jose Maniyangat. He was a Catholic priest in Florida. In April 1985, he was hit by a drunk driver and nearly died. He was then taken on a trip in which he saw heaven, hell and purgatory during his near-death experience. He had something to tell everyone about hell. He said it's about 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit and filled with souls screaming in agony. He said hell was arranged in 7 levels and the new souls are assigned to a level based on the severity of their sins that they committed in life. He didn't just see people though, he saw people he knew who had died. These included fellow priests and bishops. He said they were there because they had misled people with false teachings and bad examples. Next up at number 7 now, we have Bill Weiss. He was a devout Christian who had a near-death experience on November 23rd, 1998. On that night, he said he was lying in bed with his wife and was suddenly plunged into hell at exactly 3 a.m. on the dot. He said it was a very physical experience and that he believes God sent him to hell for him to become a living testimony. In his account, he said he was trapped inside a cell that was 15 by 10 by 15 feet. He wasn't alone either. There were 2 gruesome giants with him. After a while, 2 more vicious creatures entered the cell. When the light disappeared, the 4 giants then attacked him. He was ravaged for 23 minutes. Now the reason he knew that it was exactly that was because he woke up in his bed moments after and it was 3:23 a.m. Ever since then, Bill has taken it as his life mission to spread the message of hell and its terrors. Moving on to number 6 now, we have Audra. That's the name that this woman gave when telling her story, not wanting to be identified any further. Audra had a seizure which sent her into a coma. She said she felt herself falling down a hole and scrambled for something to hold on to. It smelt like tar and she couldn't see anything above or below her. The more she shouted that she couldn't breathe, the faster she fell. A rocky substance was flying all over the place, especially in her face. all hope was lost. When her seizure ended, she was pulled from this dark place and brought back to life. Ever since that day though, Audra feels that she is somehow destined for hell and that the tunnel was her route to it. Now she lives her life in fear, terrified that she might die one day and return to that place. In an interview with the British newspaper, Audra said, "I continue to live in this bondage-like, fear-based state of doing all I can to deserve my place here and earn my place in the afterlife."
Alright, starting at number 10, unsanctioned connection. Reddit user Stars and Severance shared an experience they had when they were younger. When they were 12, they got their first phone for Christmas. Then, one night over the holidays, they had a crazy realistic dream. In the dream, they went to a girl's house making line faces out of construction paper. And the girl in this very vivid dream had long red hair and looked nothing like anyone they knew. Then, the next day after this dream, they got a text from an unknown number. It said something along the lines of, "You'll never guess who I am." And then after some back and forth guessing, thinking it's one of their friends, the number sends a picture of a lion plate, just like in the dream. Then the next photo is a selfie, and the person texting had long red hair. Then through other texting and a one-sided game of 20 questions, it turns out this girl with the red hair knows all about the person receiving the text messages. So then they text for about 3 days before the girl texting them said, "Lose my number, forget me." She stated, "They are mad because I reached out to you." And who's they? Well, the user who shared this story didn't question the arguments of the girl and deleted the number in the text, never hearing from the girl again. But this leads me to think, from a dream to reality, this girl appeared. One explanation is a parallel universe. Think about it. Dreams can sure be wild and weird, but what about those times it feels just like real life? Can that be another universe trying to make a connection without freaking us out? Maybe. Alright, let's look at another text. Next, at number 9, disappearing texts. Random user on Reddit shared this experience they had. Their girlfriend was working at a restaurant that night and sent them a text that read, "Hey, I'm picking you up food when I'm done, so don't eat anything, love you." And this message appeared during an emergency broadcast alert and then disappeared right after the alert. This seemed odd, so the person restarted their phone and went to go pick up their girlfriend from the restaurant. When they picked her up, she said they should go somewhere to eat, which threw them off because didn't she just say she was grabbing them food? But she said her phone was off the whole time she was at work. Never sent a text. The author of the story said they saw her turn on her phone as if it was off the whole time, and there was no evidence of a text sent. But the text they received came from the girlfriend's number. So their explanation? It must have been sent from an alternate universe. A parallel one where their girlfriend was going to get them food, and this was just a glitch in the matrix that disappeared once it slipped out. And texts aren't the only thing to slip through the matrix. Next, at number 8, an unexplainable photo. So Reddit user Jake Venom had a scare 7 years ago when he found a photo on his phone he couldn't explain. He was making some iced tea with a new tea maker and sent a photo to his buddy's group chat when the previous photo in his phone caught his eye. The previous photo was supposed to be the screenshot from Twitter he sent to a friend last night, but it wasn't. It was a blurry photo of what he recognized as the kitchen of his childhood house. But he hadn't been to that house. He sent the Twitter screenshot before he went to bed, and then he sent the tea maker photo when he was making tea in the morning. So this obviously freaked him out. He said he kept having a weird feeling when he was looking at the photo and there was no reasonable explanation for it, so he ended up deleting it to stop feeling that uneasy feeling. But another Jake Venom in another timeline still lives in that house and took a photo in his kitchen that never showed up on his phone, I'm thinking. It could be. These alternate parallel universes must be like so messed. And so these have been digital so far, but what about a person who says they are from a place that no one knows exists, or doesn't exist? At number 7, from Laxaria. Back in 1851, a man who called himself Jofar Voren, or Joseph Voren, was found as he was wandering a German village. Joseph was speaking in broken German, but also spoke and wrote in unknown languages that he called Laxarian and Abramian. He said he was in Europe to find his long-lost brother, but he suffered in a shipwreck, as he came from Laxaria, which is in an area of Sakria. Now, if that doesn't ring a bell in your head, no, it didn't ring any bells for any of the officials trying to help this man out. He couldn't find where he was from. Any maps or globes didn't match what he knew. He called the 5 great continents of Earth Sakria, Alfar, Astar, Ulslar, and Yurplar, which doesn't match any of ours. People think he somehow fell into our universe from one much different from our own and much further away from where he anticipated to find his brother, but what do you think? But next, more of something different.
At number 4, 4, one last text. Grace Carsar started out by saying that she had gone to a boarding school for teens at 16, and there she met a couple of mentors that changed her life. Tanya and Tim were married and they had a strong connection with Grace. During her first year at college, Grace got a call that Tanya was sick and it was time for her to get in touch to say goodbye. Grace called Tanya's phone but had to leave a message. A few minutes later, she received a text that was sent in 2 parts. Part 1 just said that it was Tim, Tanya was resting, but to send her an email as he reads them to her every day. The second part said, "She actually just woke up. I told her you called and she was so excited. She sends you her love and she hopes you're doing well." Unfortunately, Tanya never got Grace's email because she passed the next night. Then about a year later, Grace woke up to a text. She looked at her phone and she couldn't believe what she was seeing. She said her heart skipped a beat and she shot up in bed because right there in front of her eyes was the second part of that text she received a year earlier, word for word. Grace did not recognize the number, local area code, but not Tanya's. She called Tim to ask about it and he said the number belonged to a man named Joe that he and Tanya both care for, as Joe is not independent. Joe can't even read or write, so this made things even more bizarre. Tim was still Joe's caretaker, so he checked his phone later that day and found no indication of sending the message. Grace said there's no logical explanation for the message other than Tanya sending out one more goodbye. Number 3. You hear that too? This one comes from Marlon Chen, and he started by saying that it was years ago and his brother was home visiting for college. Their parents were out, so the boys decided to grab some takeout. Chen made sure to add that it was unusually quiet as they began eating, and about 3 minutes in, he heard someone whisper his nickname in his left ear. At first, he obviously thought it was his brother, but after looking up, he didn't think so anymore as his brother hadn't moved. Marlon noted that it was especially odd because his brother never called him by his nickname, just friends from school. He brushed it off, but about 30 seconds later, his brother's head popped up and he looked very confused. His brother asked if he had heard it, to which Marlon replied no, in order to confirm his brother heard the same thing. Sure enough, he did. Marlon revealed what he had heard earlier. They searched the house for the source of the voice, but found nothing. They laughed it off and the boys continued to eat. The voice ended up returning. Chen remembers it being louder this time around. He described it as a masculine voice with an urgent quality to it. Marlon decided to try and block out the voice and just listen to his brother's story. Within a few seconds, the voice is gone from his ear, but his brother quickly stands up and yells, "Who's that? What do you want?" He said he was hearing the nickname again, but louder and more urgent this time as well. Chen said that after the confrontation, the voice was gone, but to this day, they still have no idea what was going on that night. Number 2. Grandpa saves the day. Reddit user Dugans or Heather shared that when her grandfather passed away, her and her mother just moved into a new home. Within a week of his passing, Heather had a dream that the phone rang and on the other line it was him. He said, "Hey Heather, do you know who this is?" She said she wasn't sure what to say because it sounded like him, but in the dream she was aware of him passing away. She said he just laughed and said, "I don't have much time, can I speak to your mother?" Heather replied of course and then ran to give her mom the phone, but she dropped it and it got disconnected. That was the end of her dream, and the next day she told her mom about the weird dream. Her mom got a serious look on her face and told Heather that he called her in her dream too and said, "I don't have much time, I need you to turn off Heather's heater." So her mom woke up, went into Heather's room, and sure enough, the heater was on fire. She explained that the heater had been an old plug-in one that was her grandfather's, and she used it every night, pointing it at her bed when she went to sleep. She also added that it gives her the chills whenever she tells people. And at number 1, a haunting 3 a.m. chat. This person created a whole Reddit account just to share her unsettling story. About 6 years ago, Needs Answers Now shared that her sister had taken her own life in February, but she wasn't convinced on the cause of her passing due to no explanation being left for anybody. She clarified that they were only a year apart, so they'd been extremely close sisters. Anyway, she was asleep in bed with her girlfriend when she was woken up by her phone ringing. She said the only way she's convinced it wasn't a dream is because her girlfriend heard the phone too. It was 3:37 a.m. and it was an unknown number. She mentioned that usually she wouldn't answer an unknown call, but thought maybe it was a drunk friend needing a ride home. She picked up, said hello, and all she could hear was muffled static sounds. When no one responded, she started suspecting a prank call. About to hang up, she heard her name. She said it was clear as day and sounded 100% like her sister. She said in the moment she kind of froze and started to panic. She called her sister's name a few times, but all that she heard next was, "I'm sorry, I love you, please help me." She asked her sister where she was, then Then came a really loud screeching and it went back to the dial tone. Upon hanging up, her girlfriend said her face was pale white. Number 10. From the dead. In 1995, a young troublemaker, Josh Baker, dumped a bottle of his mother's vanilla extract down the sink so he'd have something to put a handwritten note into. His note mentioned his name and his age and requested that its finder put this on the news. Josh then rode his bike over to Wisconsin's White Lake and threw the bottle into the water. Years later, Josh became a Marine and survived a tour of duty in Iraq. Tragically, he died in a car accident not long after his homecoming, leaving his loved ones devastated. Months later, Josh's friends fished something strange out of White Lake by chance, a vanilla extract bottle containing the message from 10-year-old Josh. Now, what are the chances of that? That really gives me chills. This message from beyond the grave came at just the right time to help Josh's family and friends move on. He reminds Josh's parents that their son is still with them, and I cannot imagine their reactions after they found out about this. Number 9. Hex in a bottle. While strolling along the beach of Oceanside, California, Reddit user Mariah KI13 stumbled across a message in a jar that creeped her right out. The jar was full of a strange pink liquid, which when drained revealed a folded piece of paper tied with a black ribbon. Unfolding the paper, Mariah realized it was actually a washed out photo of a woman in pink, and the photo had been pierced several times with pins. Now, being witchy myself, I can tell you that this was some sort of hex or spell. Whoever did this to the bottle really hates whoever was in that photograph or who it was intended for. Now, I fear since Mariah picked it up and touched what was in it, she might get hexed or cursed as well. So here's a lesson for all of you non-witches out there. If you see something that looks like it could be a part of a hex, spell, voodoo, just anything witchy and supernatural, do not touch it. I beg you, it's for your own good. And Mariah, if you're watching this, I take away all negative energy that bottle may have brought you. Number 8. Long distance friendship. Okay, this isn't as creepy as it is sweet, but hear me out. During a Hawaiian cruise in 1979, Dorothy and Josh Peckham put notes asking finders to write them into empty champagne bottles and threw them overboard. They even included money for postage. How kind. 4 years later, the couple received a letter from a former Vietnamese soldier, Hoa Van Nguyen, who said he found their message 15 kilometers from a shore in Thailand while escaping Vietnam's communist regime. This meant the bottle had traveled 9,000 miles. The Peckhams corresponded with Hoa for years, sharing milestones like births and weddings, and they even worked with immigration to get Hoa's family to America. It's great that they were able to create this bond, and what were the chances that Hoa found the bottle when he was in a time of need? The world truly works in mysterious ways. Number 7. Romance in a bottle. Again, more sweet than creepy, but the premise of this one is pretty weird, but hey, let's lean into it. If you've struggled to find a wife or girlfriend, look no further. The new method you have to try is message in a bottle. Aki Viking, a Swedish sailor who left his search for love up to fate, wrote a letter that simply said, "To someone beautiful and far away," then corked it in a bottle and tossed it overboard in the hopes that it would help him find a young woman to marry. 2 years later, Aki received a surprising reply from a Sicilian girl named Palonia. "I'm not beautiful," she wrote, "but it seems so miraculous that this little bottle traveled so far and long to reach me that I must send you an answer." Then the two became regular pen pals, and 3 years later, Aki moved to Sicily to marry her. So what I'm saying is, if you're that desperate, a message in a bottle may be the best way to find true love. Now, totally unrelated, but does anyone have an empty bottle that I could use? Number 6. Hiking trip. In Oakland, California, 69-year-old Larry Wright discovered a message in a rusted canister during a hiking trip to Sequoia National Park. The message had been written 40 years earlier by a teenager named Tim Taylor, who requested that anyone who found it respond. Now, it took Larry over a month to find Tim. He went through public records and visited Tim's former residence, but had little success until he reached out to a local paper called La Canada Valley Sun. The newspaper wrote about Larry's discovery, and the story eventually got back to Tim, who is now a Superior Court judge. Tim had left the message after abandoning his Boy Scout hiking troop to climb the 12,000-foot peak alone. He picked up the habit of leaving messages in bottles from his father, and I'm sure it was a shock to be tracked down from someone who found one of these messages. Number 5. Delayed message in a bottle. The current oldest message in a bottle was one of 1,020 bottles thrown into the sea between 1904 and 1906 years ago by a scientist at the Marine Biology Association in Plymouth. The message was discovered washed up on the beach in Germany by a retired postal worker, Marianne Winkler. The bottles were a part of a project to study deep sea currents and were designed to just float above the seabed. Nowadays, the association continues this research but uses technology like electronic tags. Most of the bottles from this experiment were found within months, but this one took 108 years. It's crazy that it took that long to be found, but I think they should still use bottles for this because it's just a fun idea to me, and I also wonder what the message specifically said.
Grandmother attempts to call her grandson from beyond the grave, and this brings us to number 5. A musician by the name of Carl Uphoff claims that he was called by his grandmother, who had died 2 days earlier. His grandmother was deaf, but she also called him on the phone to ask if he was even there, though she couldn't hear the answer. One night he got a call while he was hanging out with his friends. On the other end of the line, he said that he heard his grandmother's voice, and when he asked how she was able to call when she was dead, the woman hung up. Over the next several days, there was a ton more calls like this, and each time he asked her who she was or how she was able to call him. This went on for quite a bit until the call suddenly stopped. Haunted text messages climbs up onto this list at number 4. A man claims that his house is haunted by an evil poltergeist. Also claims that he is being haunted by text messages from his dead wife. There are reports that the poltergeist will pull their bed covers off while they sleep. The house had a terrible odor, and you can also feel something or someone breathing in your ears. If that wasn't enough to deal with, the man also claimed that his dead wife is haunting him through text messages. Just after she died, he got a missed phone call on his phone, but it didn't ring. The call was from the house phone, but there wasn't anyone home, so how can that be possible? Once he was inside, it smelled like cigarettes, which his wife used to smoke, and he could smell her perfume as if she was like right there. Since then, he had been getting messages which he believed are from his wife. He said that she always had her phone on her, and they even buried her with her phone. There have been messages with information that only his wife would have known, but there was no number. I mean, would you guys find this comforting or creepy? I mean, comforting in the sense of like, you're still able to communicate with your wife, but she's dead, but it's kind of creepy and scary. Up next, number 3, we have some mysterious emails sent from beyond the grave. Jack Folsey suddenly died at the age of 32 years old from a heart arrhythmia. But 5 months after he died, some of his loved ones started to receive mysterious emails from his account. These emails would mention private conversations that they had with him just before his death. So no one else could possibly have known what was said except for Jack. One of his closest friends said that he got an email notification from Jack. The message said, "Did you hear me? I'm at your house. Clean your effing attic." His friend said he turned ghost white because the two of them just had a conversation in his attic, and Jack had teased him about how messy and how dusty it was in there. No one else would have known about that conversation. Another one of his friends got a strange email from Jack about him breaking his ankle. This happened after Jack was dead. So I guess Jack is still watching over his friends, and he's still able to send them some comforting yet creepy emails. Number 2 brings us to a deceased grandma who is sending texts after death. I didn't know that grandmas were even capable of sending text messages. I mean, I just taught my dad how to send a few texts, and I shouldn't have done that because now he's texting me too much. All jokes aside, a woman is claiming that her grandmother is sending her text message after she died from cancer back in 2011. The granddaughter begged the cell phone company to not give away her grandmother's number, which they promised to do. But 3 years later, she was completely shocked when she looked down at her phone and saw a text from beyond the grave. A text from her grandmother. The message said, I'm watching over you. You'll get through this, you'll be alright. She remembered that her grandmother was buried with her cell phone, so a lot of disturbing images ran through her head. What if she's there and texting in her grave? First she thought that someone might have dug up her grandmother's grave, got a hold of her cell phone, and now they're trolling. Or is it possible that her grandmother's spirit was able to text? And now topping this list, in at number 1, we have a daughter who sent her mother an apology after death. A teenager girl from New Mexico had a fight with her mother and she left the house fueled with anger. Shortly after the fight, the teenager was involved in a devastating car crash. She was rushed to the hospital, but she was pronounced dead on arrival. A couple of hours after her death, her mother received a text message from her. It said, "Sorry mom, forgive me." I mean, that just gives me the chills. If that's in all honesty a true story, it's unbelievable, but it's scary. Oh, and did I mention that the crime scene was being cleaned up? They recovered her phone, but it was completely melted and destroyed, which makes this story even more freaky, because how was that text message even sent?
At number 6, experiencing different days. This one comes from Stewie2Griffin34 on Reddit, who is watching another one of our parallel universe videos a couple months ago. It got them thinking of a weird day they themselves had. Their friend Kate, on break from her way to detention, said that their friend Nick wasn't in that day. But when they both got home, they got texts from both Nick and Kate saying that no, Nick was in school and detention and everything that day. And then Kate said that she hadn't told them that Nick wasn't in because she never took a break outside detention. So then they were all confused. And then on top of that, Nick said that he saw them go into the library that day and was at school, saying the user who posted this was just acting distant. Then the next day, the user, trying to figure out what was happening, tried to get other opinions, and Nick's friends said, no, Nick wasn't in the day before. So was this a prank or different people experiencing different days? And I swear I remember when people tell me something specific, and then they say, no, that never happened, and I get confused, so, what is the truth? On to number 5, missing graveyard. Reddit user City Loves Chew says her mom was the one to have the trippy experience in this one. The mom in question was traveling with a friend in Old Lyme, Connecticut to a beach they often went to, Hawk's Nest Beach. They had free time one day and explored the area and ended up finding a cool cemetery called the Lord's Cemetery with a big red gate. They checked it out, took some cool pictures, and then left. No biggie. But the next day, they couldn't find the same spot again. They asked people in town, police officers, everybody, and no one had heard of it. They tried to find it in the years following, but couldn't find it, even with the help of Google Maps. Plus, the photos they took were gone. No explanation, which, when you think about it, is a grave experience from a parallel universe. And okay, that was a bad pun, we'll move on to the next one. Sorry. Next is number 4, from Denny's to Penny's. So, what if, suddenly, something so basic and normal to you was changed without question, and everyone then accepted it as the norm? Well, this happened to Reddit user is_emo. Back when they were a kid, they went to Denny's pretty often. So they were kinda shaken when one day, when they were young, their dad shook them awake and said, hey, we're heading to Penny's. And so they were all like, you mean Denny's, right? And their dad was like, no, Penny's. So they kind of accepted this, maybe it's a joke, and they roll up, but the yellow sign that is supposed to say Denny's is changed to Penny's. So now this kid is freaking out, but trying to keep cool, hide it, and yeah, you might be thinking this was just a one-day thing, maybe it was just shaking up, but no. They passed by this sign every day to school for a month, and all their friends at school kept saying it had always been Penny's anytime this person asked. But then, a month later, boom, Denny's again. So the kid asks his dad if it's changed, and their dad looks confused and asks, what do you mean? And so the kid plays it cool, but it shook them up for a while. Shook them up until they heard about possible parallel universes, and then it made total sense to them. What do you think Denny's is called in other universes? That's what I want to know. But anyways, the realization that there might be other universes doesn't come to everybody. At number 3, guardian angle. Now, a 28-year-old in Washington, D.C. named Lindsay got a scare from an unknown number. Whoever it was had bad spelling and used shortened text speak, sending sayings such as, Lindsay, I see you, with Lindsay misspelled and the words all in letter form. But this wasn't what scared her though, even though there was one text that said, I'm your guardian angel. What scared her is when she started getting texts about what she was doing currently, things that could only be described if someone was watching her, talking about her watching TV and saying they were standing right next to Lindsay. Lindsay had enough of this, it was freaking her out, and she called the number that she got from the landline, but but the line said the number wasn't in service. Then the number texted her saying, "Why did you have to do that? And you know what you did." And so this was enough for Lindsay to get really shaken, so she got the police to help her investigate, but nothing came out of it. Now what I think is this was a trickster from a parallel universe playing a prank on her. But what do you think it could be? Something a little more paranormal? But moving on to number 2, unsent text. Sometimes the story doesn't come from the person who gets the wild text, but the person who gets the reaction to it. Reddit user Trodat5204 had her sister call her out of the blue over a text she allegedly sent her. Her sister said she sent a text saying, "Hey," insert some unusual pet names she sometimes calls her sister, "I'm in this city now. I'm scared, but it's okay and it's safe here. Your sister." So the person who posted this obviously censored their information, so that's why it reads kind of weird and I keep doing brackets. But anyways, her sister is calling her to demand to know why she's in a different city, why she got this text from a different number, and wants to know what's going on. So the person who got called clarifies the situation for her sister, and they call this other number together. But it just keeps on ringing. They couldn't reach what they thought to be a reasonable explanation, so the Reddit post says it could be maybe 3 things. 1, a coincidence. 2, a joke. Or 3, a parallel universe. Someone in another universe was scared and lost, but the text got sent to the wrong sister in the wrong universe. But on to number 1, alternate universe FaceTime. Reddit user Anonymous5000 left a story of what they described as a glitch in the Matrix story on the comments of another post. What they experienced they could only describe as a FaceTime call from another universe. This user is the father of a 6-year-old daughter, and they keep in touch over FaceTime when she stays at her mom's house. While he's talking to her daughter, having a long conversation over FaceTime, when she starts asking if her mommy and daddy are going to be together forever. He then gets confused because he's been separated from her mom for 3 years at that point. But she goes on to explain that no, they're together, and that when he comes home they all watch TV together. So she keeps talking until the reception cuts it off, and he calls back, kind of confused, and then his daughter is in different clothes. He laughs it off and asked if she hung up to change, and then this guy said his daughter said, "I never hung up. You just called me, Dad." So he says, "No, we were just talking on the phone," but she says, "No, they weren't." So then, as I would too, this guy freaked out. This Reddit user says the other call must have been from a parallel universe where the 2 parents were still together, and the guy gets the chills thinking about how it could have happened. Imagine the alternate universe daughter who's thinking her dad is rambling on about not being with her mom. Kinda wild.
Number 5. Egyptian tomb curses. Egypt. One of the greatest civilizations known to mankind. Thank goodness that a bunch of Europeans decided to rob the graves of their ancestors, or else they'd have been really bored or something. However, when these losers decided to pop open those tombs, likely searching for gold, they instead found a cavalcade of curses. Some of these read as such: "Any ruler who shall do evil or wickedness to this coffin, may his heir not inherit. As for all men who shall enter my tomb, there will be judgment. I shall cast the fear of myself into him. And all who enter this tomb will make evil against it. May the crocodile be against them in the water, and the snakes against them on land. May the hippopotamus be against them in water, and the scorpion on land." Aside from being incredibly cool and threatening, these grave robbers were also plagued with visions of ghosts, and many died, usually from disease-carrying insects and violent animals. Who could have seen that coming? Number 4. The Ring of Senesenius. This ring was discovered by a farmer plowing his land in 1785, but wouldn't be brought to archaeologists until years later. Made from 12 grams of gold, the ring contains an inscription in Latin which reads Senescene vivus in Deum, which kind of translates to live in God, although the ring apparently has some spelling errors, so whatever, it doesn't matter. A tablet was discovered which was inscribed within a curse, claiming that whoever removed the ring would never again be in good health until it was returned to Nodens. The archaeologist who excavated the site decided to call upon a close friend to research the actual location of Nodens, a professor at Oxford named J.R.R. Tolkien. That's right, baby. This little curse inspired the Lord of the Rings. Number 3. The Serbian Skull Tower. Signs are very effective means of ensuring through symbology that people can understand what they mean even without speaking the language of the people that they were made by. For instance, red is generally the color that is universally used to denote that everyone should stop. And skulls usually denote that everyone in the area should probably turn around and leave. There's no better example of this than the Skull Tower, located in Serbia. Apparently, in 1804, there was a Serbian uprising against the Ottomans, an uprising that failed in spectacular fashion. After their battle, the governor of the area decided that the easiest way to ensure no one tried it again was to create a tower out of the skulls of the rebels, sending a very clear message to anyone with seditious thoughts. Just try it. Number 2. The Czech Republic Warning Stones. As the world is racked with an oncoming ecological disaster that you should be as terrified of as I am, artifacts have been uncovered which have revealed some fascinating messages. Prior to the invention of the internet, the residents of the area had the idea to inscribe messages on stones, which would warn people of incoming disasters such as droughts, famines, bad harvests, food shortages, and just incoming hunger in general. This last part led to their being dubbed as the Czech Hunger Stones, with dates going back as far as 1417. Some quotes that can be found on these messages are deeply disturbing, such as, "When you see me, weep." I guess the Warning Stones are doing their job pretty well this time around. Number 1. Charles Maffel's final message and Jeremiah Burke's final message. Messages in bottles are some of those neat little things that are synonymous with the adventures of pirates and other seafaring individuals. These messages aren't exactly as whimsical. In 1909, the vessel Waratah set sail from South Africa to Australia, but went missing at sea. Numerous people attempted to claim that they'd received letters in bottles from drowned sailors, and while most were clearly fake, one did prove to be genuine, matching with the sailor's handwriting and the time with which he would have had to write it. The message reads, "Top heavy, one side awash. Goodbye, mother and father." Signed, Charles McFell, Greaser. Several years later, a similar incident would occur with the sinking of the Titanic and the discovery of a letter sent from Jeremiah Burke, reading, "From Titanic, goodbye all, Burke of Glanmire, Cork." The message was written on a scrap of paper, then placed inside an empty bottle of holy water given to the man by his mother prior to the voyage. She died before she could read it.
Up at number 10, somebody's hurt. RealCat45 on Reddit said, "It was a normal night. She and her husband were asleep in bed when something woke her up. Upon opening her eyes, she saw her late Uncle M standing by her husband, staring down intently at him. She recalled him looking normal, but all he was doing was staring down at her husband. She was shocked and scared, so she closed her eyes in fear and opened them again. He was still there. She did the same again and he was gone. The next day, she received a call from her aunt's friend. This aunt is her Uncle M's sister, and her friend revealed that her aunt was in the hospital. Her aunt had fallen during the night and couldn't pull herself to the phone. She had lain there calling out and praying to all the saints and God and all her deceased relatives to help her somehow, but no help arrived. The friend that called with the news found her aunt in the morning. When in the hospital, she told her aunt about her uncle visiting her, but she was too scared to understand. Uncle M was trying to wake her husband because she wouldn't have been able to help her aunt on her own. At number 9, a whispered help me. This one is a shorter story, but it's still pretty unsettling. This one comes from a user by the name of Juby Love. She said one day while she was driving, she was trying to get a hold of her mother. She called her cell and it picked up after just one ring, but what came next was not a hello. She said at first it just sounded like static, but she kept saying hello and there was nothing. Then after a few greetings, she realized that it sounded like someone was whispering on the other line. She said hello again, waiting for a reply, now confused if what she'd heard was the car radio or not. Then she said the whispering got louder. Now she could make out what was being whispered, and she said it sounded like a woman saying "help me" repeatedly. Immediately she freaked out, thinking that her mom had gotten into an accident and was pinned or badly hurt and couldn't speak. Frantic now, she hung up and kept calling back. After a few tries, her mom finally picked up. That's when her mom swore she never even picked up the phone before their current call because she'd absolutely no service until that point. She ended her story with, "I'm still a little spooked. Whether it was a message from the afterlife or just a misconnection, someone whispering for help over and over is not a good thing to hear." At number 8, Mom's Still Here. Summerfield 85 shared a story that is both sweet and spooky all at the same time. She explained that her mother had passed away on a Tuesday, and on Wednesday she was home alone when her phone rang. She picked up the phone and said immediately and distinctly she could hear her mother's voice. Summer said that her mother was saying "low, low." She responded with "Mom?" After that, however, they were disconnected. Summer went on to explain that Low was a nickname that her mom used for her, and she noted that her mom was the only person who called her that. She also said it was definitely her New York accent, the right tone, her mother's voice. The call wasn't the only time her mother made an appearance after her passing though. Summer said there were other things that happened in the 2 weeks following. Items that were related to her mom flew across the room twice. On one occasion, a bracelet was thrown across the room in front of 2 other people. I guess those friends now have no other choice than to believe her after that if they were ever skeptical. If my mom came back in the afterlife to throw things around my house, I think I would be happy she's there, but also totally freaked out that things are flying around my apartment. At number 7, Wrong Person, Right Message. We Get It Ron, You're a Guy on Reddit, or Ben, started out his story by saying him and his whole family are believers in all things paranormal. He said it happened about 8 years ago while in high school, explaining that his parents were divorced and he was living with his dad at the time while his mom worked nights at a casino. It was the middle of the night on a school night when he woke up to his phone ringing. Ben looked at the caller ID, but the caller was unknown. He said, "I picked up the phone and what I heard on the other end haunts me to this day." Ben answered the phone to what he described as wind on the other end, as if someone were running. After saying hello a few more times, he heard a woman screaming his name, pleading for help. Ben said she kept giving off a blood-curdling scream followed by "Ben, Ben, help me, Ben!" But the wind was so loud she was almost drowned out. Immediately his brain went to his mom being attacked after her shift. He screamed back hysterically for his mom and they went back and forth for what he said felt like 3 minutes until the call ended. The next morning Ben hoped it was a bad dream, but his phone call log confirmed the unknown number did call. At school that day he asked all of his friends if they'd maybe prank called him the night before, but no one owned up to it. Then his dad revealed that evening that his great-grandma had passed the same night about an hour before Ben received the call. At number 6, Emily's Calling. This Reddit user goes by American Root Pace. He shared that about a decade ago he was working at an AT&T when a woman came in with an old red flip phone, looking a little shaken up. She explained that she worked in a funeral home and she barely used her cell. Several days before that point, she'd received a call from a man needing funeral services. The call was fine, but when she was leaving for the day, she received another call on her personal phone and the name on the screen said Emily. None of this seemed strange to him until the woman explained she only had a few names saved in her phone and none of them were Emily. He made sure to add that in order for a name to show up on a call, it would have to be saved in the phone. Then the woman explained that every person that calls her now comes up as Emily, even unsaved numbers. He confirmed this by calling her phone from both his personal and the store phone. He double checked the address book and sure enough there were only 3 numbers saved, none under Emily. He said he was perplexed but admitted he didn't know much about the software, just that bugs can happen, although never on a basic phone like hers, but that's all he could think of. He explained this to her and she agreed that it made sense, but why the name Emily? Well, she revealed that the man who had called her several days before about the funeral was calling for the recently deceased Emily. He said this sent a tingle up his spine, especially because the man called on the funeral home phone, not her personal. He ended up sending her a warranty phone and he never heard from her again. At number 5, Judy. User Midwayer shared this story about her mom on Reddit and it gave me shivers for her. She started out giving some background info. Her grandmother lives alone in an old house that her mother and aunts grew up in. When they were kids, the house was supposedly haunted. Her mother in particular was haunted by a voice that called her name Judy from the bathroom, while her sister Gina would speak in tongues at times. She shared that it was so bad that they actually had a priest come in at one point and cleanse the house. She did say though that nothing major other than a few odd things went down and it had been ages. So she gets a call from her mother asking if
if she had pranked her by leaving a creepy voicemail at around 11:30 that morning. She explained to her mom that she didn't leave the message and wondered who the last person that called was. The mom had 2 missed calls from the grandmother. She headed to her mom's to listen to the message and decided it did come from grandma's house. After calling her grandma, they decided there was no way she left any messages. Now, the actual voicemail she described as not staticky but glitchy, with a dominant low voice that said her mom's name slowly. It was 50 seconds long and repeats. Sounds to me like it was the same voice from the bathroom when she was a kid checking in. She said they found out how to put the message on her computer but still have no idea who the voice belongs to. She said every time she listens to it back, she gets shivers down her spine.
Dead girlfriend's Facebook message comes onto this list at number 10. This story comes to us from Reddit. Nathan says that his girlfriend Emily died in a tragic car accident back in 2012. Approximately 1 year later, Emily returned from the dead to communicate with Nathan through Facebook. Is this real life right now? According to Nathan, only him and Emily's mom have access to her Facebook. Take a look for yourself. Here are some screenshots of the Facebook messages sent from beyond the grave. If that wasn't creepy enough, Emily started to tag herself in photos in the background. But wait, there's more. Emily even took a picture of Nathan and sent it to him. I don't know about you guys, but I'm thinking Nathan wasn't the greatest boyfriend, and she should probably deactivate his Facebook account because this is just way too much to handle. Next up on our list, at number 9, we have phone calls after death. Let's go back to September 12, 2008, when a commuter train that was carrying 225 people collided with the freight train and crashed. 135 people were injured, 25 people unfortunately died. One of the people that lost their lives that day was 49-year-old Charles E. Peck. He had 3 children and he was engaged to his fiancée Andrea Katz. Well, once the crash was broadcasted, his fiancée was driving to the train station to pick him up with his parents and siblings. His body was recovered from the wreckage 12 hours after the incident, but for the first 11 hours his cell phone made several calls to his loved ones. It called his son, brother, stepmother, sister, and his fiancée. In total, his family received 35 phone calls that night, but when they answered, all they heard was static. When they tried to call back, it went straight to voicemail. It was later discovered that he had died on the impact, but long after he died, his cell phone somehow continued to reach out to his loved ones, almost saying like, "Hey, I'm okay." Maybe he was trying to reach out to them one last time beyond the grave. It's really scary and creepy when you think about it, but imagine just having that one more opportunity to listening to your loved ones that have passed away. So because of the phone calls, the rescue team was able to find his body, but they were never able to find his cell phone. I mean, what a creepy ending to that story. What happened to the cell phone? Who was making the phone calls? A warning message from beyond the grave takes us to number 8. On September 20th, 1988, a man received a very unexpected phone call. When he answered his cell, it was a familiar voice that sounded far away. She said, "Please be careful." He tried to ask who it was, but instead the ghostly voice repeated its warning 3 more times before hanging up. The phone number was unlisted, but he said that the voice sounded like his mother. But she had been dead for almost 2 years, so that's a big problem. 2 days after this scary phone call, he went to visit his father in a facility. The staff warned him that his father had become very violent, and maybe if he talked to him it would help his father. Well, once he got into the room, his father grabbed a knife from the drawer and tried to attack his son. If it wasn't for that phone call, he might not have been paranoid or acted as quickly as he did. Young boy sends his parents signals after death, and this takes us into number 7. Ray Dow Jr. was only 10 years old when he died in an accident while riding his bike. He took a sharp turn onto a steep hill, and that led him into a cemetery. His parents believe that their son is sending them signals that led them to know that he's okay and that he has come to terms with his death. Here are some of the signs. On the day that he died, his mom had took off one of his artworks from the fridge because she wanted to frame it. She placed it underneath another painting of Jesus Christ in the clouds, so the family believes that this was a premonition of his death. The family also says that when they visit the place where he died, they can feel his spirit. One day they brought flowers and a balloon to where he died, and a butterfly landed on the balloon and then moved to an angel statue. The family believes that he's communicating with them and he wants them to move on with their lives and be happy, and to let them know that he's okay. And now at number 6, we have a voice message from someone's grandpa. On April 12, 2011, a scary phone call was uploaded onto YouTube. The uploader claims that this is a ghostly phone message from his deceased grandpa, who died a few months earlier. Let's have a listen.
Saved message.
Okay, if that's truly real, that's pretty freaky. Is anyone else completely freaked out? Because I am. The phone call only rang once, and the uploader said that he instantly got a voicemail notification. People in the comment section said they can also hear, love you, and help me. I mean, what do you guys hear?
And is grandma's message. Now this message is truly disturbing and just plain shocking. This online user said, when my grandma died, my mother and my aunts visited the psychic because they believed that dark forces ended the life of my grandmother. She slept in the shower and died a week later. My mother and aunt called my grandmother if she was okay in the afterlife, and she said that she was hungry and craving mangoes and stuff, and she warned them that she will take one of my pregnant aunts. Both my aunts were pregnant. They stared at each other and hoped that they wouldn't die. Fast forward 2 years later, my aunt died from a stroke after celebrating her birthday. Ugh, creepy. Number 9, the boyfriend. This Reddit user said, so some of you know my story, but I ran of home just to have the love of my life die a month later, and I had an intuition about it the night before. Anyway, I was talking to a psychic the other day. She was practicing her intuition with me and gave me guidance on my situation and to figure out what next move I should take. She does mediumship too, but she wasn't comfortable with doing it yet as she wasn't fully comfortable contacting deceased loved ones. However, the conversation ended up steering towards that, and my late boyfriend ended up reaching me through her. I told my boyfriend to show her a Liberty Bell, so I knew for sure that she was actually giving insight on my situation and not just cold calling. There was no way she could have searched up anything associated to him or myself, as I was on an alternate account, did not give her any information, and we both have private social medias. She ended up bringing up the Liberty Bell, and she got a few messages from him. He said to tell me that it's okay, that he loves me and he is so sorry, and that he can fly and he's happy. It was incredibly beautiful. She got excited as I was. Any form of doubt I had there being an afterlife is gone. I know he is with me. I do have tons of comfort though, and I'll know I'll get through it with him in my passenger seat. Number 8. Guardian Angel. This user posted a story saying I went to a well-renowned psychic. All I told her was my name and date of birth. She began to draw letters, circles, and lines. From that, she gave me the first initial of my brother. He goes by his middle name and doesn't list his first name anywhere. She told me about my future husband. I hadn't met him yet. She even told me what he looked like. She said the man I was currently seeing wasn't the one for me. It spooked me when she told me I had a guardian angel, my dad, who had passed. She asked me his name, and I thought she wanted his first name, so I said William, and she adamantly said he says his name is Bill, and that he didn't mean to leave so soon. That gave me a startle since he died before I was born, some 40 years earlier. There was no Google back then, nor was my last name the same when I was born. I'd love to say it was a bunch of bull, but I just don't know. I do know now my husband looks and sounds like what she told me. Spooky. Number 7. Sick father. This online user spoke about one of their experiences and said, before I even sit down in a booth with this lady doing my reading, she said, your dad has passed, right? He has. I'm not at the age where one would make an assumption that my parent is deceased. He died when I was in my late teens. She goes on to call certain things, like the fact that it was a short illness that could have been diagnosed sooner. That he wanted me to know that he was happy it happened that way, as he didn't want prolonging treatments causing suffering. She mentioned that I had his bag and he was happy for that. She mentioned a pianist being my grandfather, and then goes back to my father talking about his last moments in eerie detail, like who was in the room and who just missed him, and how his mom collected him from the hospital. He mentioned me changing my hair a lot. It was a running joke between us. Talked about trips we would do, stressing to remember good times. She even mentioned some details that I was unsure about but have since confirmed. She talked about my grandmother who passed very recently, said I was a good person, which is pretty much verbatim what she would say to me every time we talked, and that I was wearing her necklace. Now I had my coat buttoned up and the medium could not see this. The final thing that is really freaky to me is that she told me my dad has a child where he is, a small baby. She asked me if my mom had a miscarriage or terminated a pregnancy because my dad says it's his. I tell her no and that it's probably a mistake. Maybe it's my sister's. She reiterates that no, he says it's his child. I give up, chalking it to nonsense, but I had to check, so I called my mom today and she started crying. Early on, her and my dad had to terminate a pregnancy and they never told anyone about it. I still don't know what to think. I don't think you can read that much out of someone, but I'm happy that I went. Number 4, prison message. In 2009, a letter written in 1944 by 7 Jewish prisoners were unearthed by a Polish construction crew. Workmen were renovating a cellar near a former German concentration camp site when they discovered the note rolled up and hidden in a bottle in a concrete wall. The note was written on a small paper scrap from the cement bag and contained the names, camp numbers, and hometowns of the prisoners, all of whom were aged between 18 and 20. The note was verified by historians who suggested the young prisoners simply wanted to leave some record of their existence behind. Now this is incredibly sad to me, and the way that this information was laid out, I think it's safe to say that these men died in the prison camp, which is just horrible. This message is now a part of public exhibition as a reminder of what Jewish and other individuals went through during World War II. Number 3, rescued from pirates. In 2011, a crew from a hijacked Italian cargo boat was saved by passing British commandos after sending their rescuers a message in a bottle. The crew, 7 Italians, 6 Ukrainians, and 10 Indians, had locked themselves inside an armored area of the vessel when the pirates boarded the ship, said Italian Defense Minister Ingazio La Rosa. Safe from the pirates' threats, the crew continued to navigate the ship. Now the criminals managed to cut off all means of communication, but the prisoners tossed a bottle with a message through a porthole explaining the situation. Rubber boats with British Marine commandos on board circled the boat while a helicopter hovered above. The pirates surrendered right away, some throwing their weapons into the sea, and were arrested. 2 NATO ships arrived and Special Forces officers stormed the ship and freed them. The crew members were obviously shaken up, but were unharmed except from one cut hand. The pirates were arrested and the message in the bottle received a Medal of Valor. Now this sounds something right out of a movie, which is so cool to me. I'm glad the message worked though and everyone was found safe, and whoever thought of that idea on board is a genius and most likely saved everyone's life who was on board the boat. Number 2, goodbye from the Titanic. RMS Titanic was a British passenger liner operated by the White Star Line, which sank in the North Atlantic Ocean on April 15, 1912, after striking an iceberg during her maiden voyage from Southampton, England to New York City, United States. Of the estimated 2,224 passengers and crew aboard, more than 1,500 people died, making it the deadliest sinking of a single ship at the time. Safe to say, it was a horrible event and scarred a lot of people. Now, with people on board saying their last goodbyes, a third-class Irish passenger named Jeremiah Burke was traveling to America when the ship went down. 13 months later, a man found a bottle on the beach just miles from the deceased Irishman's hometown. The bottle was recognized as a small bottle of holy water given to the young man by his mother prior to his departure. The note inside simply read, "From Titanic, goodbye all, Burke of Glanmire, Cork." He had used his own bootlace to tie the message, and it had miraculously traveled thousands of miles to reach the shores of his home. Now that is just insane that it landed right there, but it was meant to be. It sounds like his mother got somewhat of a proper goodbye, and I'm sure that note made all the difference. And coming in at number 1 is A Soldier's Last Goodbye. In 1999, a fisherman in England found a bottle containing a letter to a World War I soldier's wife written as he was heading off to the front. The letter said, "Dear wife, I am writing this note on this boat and dropping it into the sea just to see if it will reach you. If it does, sign this envelope on the right-hand bottom corner where it says recipient. Put the date and hour of recipient and your name where it says signature and look after it well. Ta-ta, sweet. For the present, your hubby." Also attached was a covering note intended for the finder of the bottle. "Sir or madam, youth or maid, would you kindly forward the enclosed letter and earn the blessing of a poor British soldier on his way to the front this 9th day of September 1914, signed Private T. Hughes, 2nd Durham Light Infantry, 3rd Army Corps Expeditionary Force." Now this is so sweet, but the soldier tragically died in battle 2 days after the letter was thrown to sea, and his wife was never never able to receive it. His wife and 2-year-old daughter eventually made their way to New Zealand, and it wasn't until fisherman Steve Gowan caught the bottle in 1999 that the message resurfaced. Traveling to New Zealand, Steve managed to deliver the heartfelt message to the soldier's daughter, Emily Crowhurst. Number 6. Group reading. This online user said, a friend of mine went to a well-known local medium last week for a private reading. Just because all of her friends were going, she decided to join in. She is a logical, intelligent, and scientific person with no belief in the afterlife. The reading was a walk-in session, no pre-booking was required, so no research could have been done on this person prior to the reading. When she sat down, the medium immediately told her about a tragic event that resulted in the death of a very close family member a few years ago. She was quite specific with the event, the circumstances surrounding it, the description of the person that died, and the relationship that person had with my friend. My friend says that she wasn't prompted for details, and she then gave my friend messages from the deceased person, again rich with things that were detailed and very specific, with no way the medium could have known/guess. The whole scenario has left my friend questioning her lack of belief completely. Again, this person is very logical and hasn't believed in an afterlife or anything for many years. I myself am an atheist and have been for some time, but when told the high level of detail that was given to her, I'm even starting to question it all myself. Number 5. Great-grandmother. This user said, I was at Lilydale Assembly about 30 years ago, and this woman gave me an amazing reading of my great-grandmother, who I knew well as she hadn't passed till I was 16. So, the medium described many of the things she did as a young woman that my mother knew about but I did not, as well as many things I did know. I was graduating from college later that year, so I was curious if she had any good ideas about what I should be doing. My great-grandmother said that I would do a lot of random work, but that ultimately I would be a lot like her in my work, in that people in the community would come to me for help every day, and that I would work in education, and that I would be in front of many classrooms, but that I would not be a teacher. She was a one-room schoolhouse era teacher, and figured out ways to help the people at school without using money that wasn't available anyway. After working in a lot of interesting but underpaid and underutilized administrative roles, I got a gig as a GA in a financial aid office to pay for my counseling degree. Also underpaid and underutilized, LOL, but it paid tuition, so I was down for it. So how did I pull all this together? Well, my mom pulled out the cassette tape of the reading the medium had let me make and played it for me about a year after I got this job, and it was absolutely uncanny. It was like my great-grandmother showed this lady everything I was doing for a living, and she described it perfectly without having any names for anything. Number 4. The Friend. This user had an interesting date experience. They said, I matched with a girl who claimed to be a psychic or medium. I recently had a friend who suddenly died and she knew exactly what the girl looked like. Still skeptical, she said, did any of these mean anything to you? She then said key phrases that me and that person shared, that I have never ever shared with anyone else or had the same lingo with anyone else. She picked out specific words and phrases that she would have only known if she had access to my phone or knew the girl, which was also not possible. I was not paying her, she was just someone I matched with and got along with. Number 3. Monica the Medium. This user posted this online 7 years ago. They said my college roommates and I had Monica the Medium come to our apartment and do a reading. I went in having zero expectations and being completely skeptical. By the time the session was done, I was sobbing. She knew so many details about my grandfather's life and passing. She told me he was wearing a long white lab coat, as he was a surgeon back when they would wear those old-fashioned lab coats, that she associates me with worn brown leather, sounds strange. When he died, all that was in his wallet was a photo of me, and 1,000 other small things. She knew I had 2 brothers and told me that my grandfather didn't like who I was dating at the time, and his name started with a G. Yep, try breaking up with someone because your dead grandfather expressed his disapproval through a medium. She said he is with one of his daughters, didn't know who until I repeated this to my mom, who told me that my grandmother had a stillborn daughter she never talks about. Number 2, communicating with a dog. Now, when I read the story, I was shocked and I knew I had to share it with all of you. This Reddit user said, "This experience was the most profound thing that has ever happened to me in my life. Even more profound than the time I died of a heart attack and was resuscitated 15 to 20 minutes later and then in a coma." Wow. Now recently, and with the help of an animal communicator, I connected with my soul dog Elvis, who transitioned to spirit in May. Elvis was the king and identified himself as such, which confused the heck out of the medium. He then dropped the mic when he said he's lived many lives and he thought we'd been together before, that I had always taken excellent care of him, and that he'd like to come back to me again. He was his true self, funny, gargacious, snarky, and proud. Very proud. Everyone who met him described him as magnificent, and he loved being a celebrity everywhere we went. At the end of the reading, Elvis invited and inspired me to join with his spirit to move my life's purpose forward in spite of grief. And yes, I'm doing that right now. Hey, this might be hard for some people to believe, but if this helps her, then that's great. And coming at number 1 is father-in-law. This online user said, "I was a skeptic for years until I had one read after my father-in-law passed away. This medium was bringing up things that my grandparents were saying from when I was a kid, stories from my husband's childhood, and knew direct names, places, year, etc. She described a picture wall in our home, a conversation I had with my father-in-law's picture by myself, our trip that was upcoming to Mexico, and even when we would have our rainbow baby. There were so many bang-on things to write down here. She honestly blew my mind."
In our number 10 spot, text messages. According to a Catholic priest named Stephen Rossetti, demons are managing to figure out how to adapt to our new technologies at an incredible rate. In the olden days, sure, you inhabit a body, scream, convulse, terrorize. I mean, that was pretty much what the job entailed. But as the world changes, so do the demons and how they torture us. We might be familiar with entities flickering lights, but according to Rossetti, they can text through the possessed soul if they choose to. Rossetti claims he has personally seen 3 cases in which a demon has texted the family or friends of the possessed person, the worst of which read, "Her torments start now. Priest all night. We will make her bleed." Ooh. I couldn't find what happened to this poor possessed girl after, but considering Rossetti claims to perform 20 exorcisms a week, I'm hoping he was able to save her from the terrifying threats. Next up at number 9, Patrick Antle. As Patrick tells it, when he was about 17, he decided to sneak out of the house so that he could attend a party. Now, he got out of the house and made it to the party just fine, but it was what he saw returning home that shook him to his core. At about 2 a.m., he was walking down a familiar street when all of a sudden he saw a house that he swears had never existed until that night. He noticed that the garage door was open, and just when he was about to keep moving, 2 beating red eyes appeared in the darkness. Terrified, he froze, and then all of a sudden, like from a nightmare, he claims he heard a gnarly voice inside his head saying, "Turn away now or your body will burn in the deep fires of hell, and your soul will be tormented for eternity." He said his body immediately was freed and he sprinted home as fast as he could. After about a month, he worked up the courage to walk down that street once again, and when he did, the mysterious house was gone and he never saw it again. Coming in at number 8, message in an exorcism. Exorcisms are the most tried and true way that the church has dealt with demonic possession, and though many terrifying things can happen during one, a demon speaking through their victim is at the top of the list for me. About 30 years ago, an American televangelist was on his way to Russia to help a possessed woman, and for some reason, I have no clue why, he decided to bring along his roughly grade 3 aged son. When he arrived, she was already making strange noises, had bloodshot eyes, and would randomly convulse at a moment's notice. He wasted no time before beginning to try and rid the woman of the demon, and according to the son who witnessed the entire thing, during her exorcism she turned to look directly at him and in a deep, manly voice said, "This is my domain. You are not allowed here. You will suffer the lake of fire for your heresy." Luckily for her, the exorcism appeared to be successful, but the words haunted his son for the rest of his life. Next up at number 7, demon defeated. This one is kind of a different vibe than any of the others on this list, but still unsettling all the same. Back in 1840, Gottlieb Dietz, I may have butchered that, a devout Lutheran woman, suddenly started to worry people in her village. Concerned she was being abused, a doctor decided to stay the night in her house to make sure she was alright, and after one night it was clear that Dietz and her house were haunted by something truly evil. Dietz said she began experiencing the ghost of a terrifying woman holding her dead son haunt her each night, and people of the town said the possessions kept getting worse and worse. Eventually she got the attention of Reverend Blumhard, who claims the woman demon would speak directly through Dietz to him when he tried to perform exorcisms, but still he persisted. Eventually he was successful, and upon ridding Dietz of her demons, Blumhard swears the demon screamed, "Jesus is Victor!" right before exiting her body for good. Coming in at number 6, a death sentence. More and more it seems demons are deciding to contact people through our devices. Now, they're known to reach us through texts or emails, but in 1980, this demon managed to hack into a Commodore CBM 8032. Manfred Bowden, the owner, was working on a biorhythm program when all of a sudden he noticed numbers and figures appearing that he was not inputting. Lines of text he had already programmed were changing, and then, like from a horror movie, a sentence started to form. It read, "I am here. You will die, Manfred. 1982. Accident. August 16th, 1982. Yours, Klaus." Bowden was entirely freaked out, but the entity wasted no time before sending another saying, "Heart attack." Ugh. This sent Bowden into a spiral awaiting for the fateful day. Thankfully, he did not experience the fate that he feared, but after that he became obsessed and started trying to contact entities from other dimensions. But he never received messages quite as clear as his alleged death sentence.
Coming in at number 5, we have this warning. I can't think of anything scarier than going to visit the tombstone of a loved one and finding these tasteless warning signs. Councillors in Plymouth in England placed garish yellow warning signs on the graves that they had deemed unsafe or hazardous. Basically, they were worried that they were going to topple over at some point. I'm all about preventing some danger, but honestly, bright yellow signs that cover the name of the person buried, for me it's a bit of an eyesore. Mourner Paul Ford found his grandparents' grave had one of the signs on and spoke out about how disrespectful it was, and how the message could have been at the back of the grave. True. Coming in at number 4, we have spooky old Midnight Mary. It seems that a very scary message can be found on a grave at the Evergreen Cemetery in New Haven. The inscription is actually a very ghostly warning. The grave belongs to Mary E. Hart, who died under strange circumstances in 1872. Around the top of her grave reads, "The people shall be troubled at midnight and pass away." It seems that Mary was considered somewhat of a witch in her era, and some even say that she haunts the New Haven graveyard to this day, taking souls to the underworld with her if they're by her grave at the stroke of midnight. Of course, these are probably just urban legends made up to match her spooky gravestone, although I still wouldn't want to be around at midnight just in case. You were waiting for him, here he is. Coming in at number 3, we have King Tut's Terror. Do not disturb an ancient Egyptian tomb. Message received loud and clear, although it only took the deaths of 6 people for us to realise. Now, a lot of you will be familiar with the curse of the pharaohs and what happened with Tutankhamun's grave, so I will just recap really quickly. In 1922, Egyptologist Lord Carnarvon and archaeologist Howard Carter were the first to enter King Tut's tomb. Carnarvon died from a mosquito bite to the cheek shortly after the tomb was open. A similar mark was also found on the king. George J. Gold, Audrey Hepburn, Hugh Evelyn White, Aaron Ember and Archibald Douglas Reed also died shortly after coming into contact with the tomb or someone who had entered. It seems that outside the burial chamber was an inscription that read, "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king." Also found in the tomb was a warning on a bracelet that read, "Cursed be he who moves my body, to him shall come fire, water and pestilence." Now the man on the receiving end of this bracelet actually did have his house burned down, then when it was rebuilt it was hit by a flood. Interesting. Coming in at number 2, we have a curse upon the bullies. Well, Mary of Wallingport, Massachusetts certainly got the last word, didn't she? It seems that Mary C. Delancey was a nuisance in her community. She believed her neighbours were up to no good and she would shine lights into their properties. She owned a lot of cats and would spend hours feeding pigeons, which is kinda sweet, but it also seems like she was quite the recluse. She felt her neighbours bullied her and she was unwilling to let bygones be bygones. In one final act of revenge, she wrote on her tomb, "May eternal damnation be upon those in Wallingport who without knowing me have maliciously vilified me. May the curse of God be upon them and theirs." Cool. Just curse the whole community then. Cheers, babe. Mary died in 1985, and it seems that her curse got lost in the post, as the people of Wallingport don't believe they've come across any misfortune whatsoever. The woman who actually moved into Mary's old home said to a local newspaper that the curse didn't bother her. She said, "I was frankly saddened for this lady who must have had so much turmoil in her life that she'd put this on her gravestone." Another member of the community wrote, "Nobody even takes it seriously, of course. It's a funny thing. We all laugh about it." Ooh, rough ride for old Mary. Finally, coming into number 1, one tomb that should never have been disturbed, we have Tamerlane's Terror. Did it unleash Hitler? Maybe. Tamerlane founded the Timurid Empire in the 14th century, stretching across Central Asia and Persia. Tamerlane was also known as Timur and was buried in modern-day Uzbekistan, and his burial chamber was infiltrated by Soviets. Written on the wall, there was a very scary message indeed. "When I rise from the dead, the world shall tremble. Whomsoever opens my tomb shall unleash an invader more terrible than I." Now, Tamerlane was indeed terrible. The Middle East and parts of India were ransacked with their populations massacred. So, did they heed this warning? Did they hell? Soviet anthropologists dug him up, and what happened? Adolf Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest military operation of all time. Now, a lot of people were killed, to just put that extremely lightly. When Stalin found out, he actually had Tamerlane reburied with full Islamic rites. Days later, the Soviets eventually and finally won a battle at the Battle of Stalingrad. Hitler did continue to plague the world for another 3 years though. Is this why?
Normal haunted places are scary, but haunted churches, a completely different story. So, let's take a look at them. Buckland Abbey is a 700-year-old house. It was built on the site of a former abbey, which was sold to Sir Francis Drake after he returned from his circumnavigation of the globe in 1580. But while Francis was a national hero, locals believed that he had only defeated the Spanish Armada because he'd made a pact with the devil. Sir Francis Drake's ghost is believed to ride across Dartmoor in a black coach driven by headless horses led by 12 chattering goblins and pursued by a pack of baying dogs. That is the most metal thing I've ever heard. But it's also kind of terrifying. It's also said that any living dog that hears the spectral hound is said to die instantly. So that's kind of sad. I'd veer away from this place if you have a dog. Egg Hill Church is one of the most haunted churches out there. Legend has it that the crazy pastor of the Egg Hill Church ended the lives of all of his parishioners post-communion, and soon after hanged himself and died as well. Because of this, visitors have reported hearing the cries of victims that died at the hands of the pastor, even though the building remains locked and empty. That wasn't enough. Word has it that the abandoned church and its premises are vandalized and haunted by ghosts. But the interesting thing is, Egg Hill Church did reportedly bear witness to a strange miracle. According to a story, a tornado struck the area during a camp meeting near the church, damaging trees and snapping branches all around. But the tents and the trees at the camp remained intact as people kneeled and prayed during the storm. So could these spirits who are locked inside the church have helped these folks? Who knows? Located in the French Quarter of New Orleans, St. Louis Cathedral is the oldest cathedral in the United States, still in use. The first version was constructed in 1718, and the final version of the cathedral was completed in the 1850s. Because of this long history, St. Louis Cathedral has become home to a number of spirits. One of the most famous ghosts to haunt the cathedral is Pierre Antoine, who served there as a priest from 1774 until his death in 1829. Pierre Antoine famously baptized Mary Laveau, the voodoo queen of New Orleans, and later performed the marriage to her first husband. Antoine's spirit has been seen walking through an alleyway outside the church, named after him, while quietly singing and looking in through the stained glass windows. Other ghosts include Pierre-Antoine's predecessor, Pierre Dagobert, the pirate John Lafitte, and even the infamous Delphine Lalaurie. So if you ever go to this church, be prepared to see like a ghost or two. St. Mary's Episcopal Church, Kansas City. Father Henry David Jardine, a controversial Episcopal priest, is believed to haunt his former congregation at St. Mary's Episcopal Church. Henry came to the church in 1879, when it was still St. Luke's mission. He caused controversy by introducing Catholic practices, and there was speculation about him having a troubled past. In 1886, Henry died in St. Louis from an apparent chloroform overdose, which the Episcopal Church ultimately deemed was because of him taking his own life. Because of this, he could not be buried at St. Mary's as he'd intended, and the years since his death, visitors have smelled incense where there is none, and seen a ghostly figure thought to be him looking out one of the second floor windows. During one paranormal investigation, an electromagnetic field detector went off near the altar, and the apparition of a priest was caught on film. In the year 2000, Jardine's body was moved to St. Mary's, and his final resting place now sits below the church's altar, and you'd think he'd stop showing himself around the church, but he hasn't. Constructed between 1882 and 1885, Most Holy Trinity Church in Brooklyn, along with its adjoining school and rectory, is believed to be extremely haunted. In 1897, church sexton George Stells was a victim of homicide in the church, but the criminal was never caught. Since then, a bloody handprint has occasionally appeared on the wall leading up to the bell tower, which is kinda cool. The school was built in 1887 on the site of the church's graveyard, although all the bodies were said to have been moved to a different location. Ghostly activity makes some suspect that a few bodies remain beneath the school. Yeah, building on top of a graveyard, I don't think that's ever worked out well for people. Always hear creepy stuff happening after that. People have seen lights in the gymnasium turn on and off by themselves for years, and heard footsteps when the gym is completely empty. The rectory is also the site of paranormal activity. The bedroom formerly used by Monsignor Michael May, who died in 1895, is rarely used because of his ghost making noises in the room throughout the night. Dogs visiting the rectory have also been known to stare at the main staircase, even though it doesn't appear that anyone is there. But at least they don't drop dead instantly like before. The construction of St. Bartholomew the Great Church began in 1120. Located in what is now West Smithfield, a monk and Norman courtier named Raher was responsible for receiving land and funds from King Henry I to build the church. There's a lot of history contained in St. Bart's, including some stories that are particularly dark. A number of homicides and executions took place on the grounds of the church, including the burning of heretics. And today, several resident ghosts and unnamed entities reside within the church walls. The Duke of Argyll, the painter William Hogarth, and the apparition of a priest have been seen in the church. There's also a white mist that appears in the center aisle of St. Bart's, and some reports indicate the mist forms into the shape of a woman. The positive energy is countered by a black mist that is also seen in the church and is thought to be residual negative energy of all the violence seen at St. Bart's. The church's most famous ghost, though, is Raher himself. The monk has been seen wandering the church, supposedly looking for his foot, which was allegedly stolen from his crypt centuries after his death. Why would someone take a foot? Give that back. That is not nice. Don't steal dead people's feet. It's also said that his ghost appears on the first day of every July at 7 a.m., so that's something. In 1918, a young woman was seen pacing the steps of the First Church of Christ Scientist, located at the corner of 3rd and Ormsby in Louisville, Kentucky. More than a century later, it said her ghost is still seen, pacing and sobbing during the night. This ghost is known as the Lady of the Stairs, or Miss G, which I love. It's believed that Miss G was a member of the prominent Gothrite family, and that her parents attempted to marry her to a much older man after she graduated from high school. But Miss G had already fallen in love with a young man who is currently fighting in World War I. After the war, the soldier, who is believed to be Herbert Fulton Dixon, returned to Louisville, and the young couple planned to leave town and get married in Chicago. That night, the night they were to leave, Miss G went to the steps of the First Church of Christ Scientist where she and Dixon regularly met. Sadly, Dixon never showed up, and passerby saw a distressed Miss G pacing the steps of the church. As it turned out, Dixon had come down with the Spanish flu and was unable to make it to the church, but the news never made it to Miss G. In a matter of days, both Dixon and Miss G had died from the flu. Miss G's spirit has been seen on the church steps ever since. Sad. It was a sad world before cell phones, right? I got the flu, can't show up, please go home, get out of the cold. As the largest Gothic cathedral in Northern Europe, the stunning York Minster is believed to date back to 627 AD. With a church that old, there are a number of hauntings associated with the church. One of the most famous is that during the 1820s, two ladies from a tour group going around the church found themselves separated and wandering around the building. They encountered a man in a naval uniform who approached one of the women and whispered in her ear. The story goes that he was the woman's brother who had died at sea. The siblings had made a pact that whoever died first was to come back and tell the other if the afterlife existed. Another apparition said to haunt the York Minster is Dean Gale, who died in 1702, aged 26. He reportedly enjoys sitting in the pews and listening to the sermons. They sound like friendly ghosts, which is, alright. The Snagov Monastery in Romania. This island-bound church, the Snagov Monastery, seems perfect, but has a dark side. The church is the final resting place for one of the most notorious and bloodthirsty rulers of all time. Founded back in the 14th century, more than just one church has stood upon this island. The original wooden structure was doomed, eventually sinking into the surrounding lake, causing locals to believe the island was cursed. Eventually, this island was to become the resting place for, ladies and gentlemen, Vlad Tepes, better known as Vlad the Impaler, the real-life inspiration for Bram Stoker's Dracula. Vlad is said to be buried at the entrance to the church. There is a belief that Vlad had committed more atrocities in his life than any individual ever should, so he was placed at the church's entry so that anyone walking over his grave would have to take some of his sins upon themselves, which doesn't seem fair. There remains some mystery and debate whether Vlad is actually even buried at the church, but the monastery is still said to have ties to Vlad regardless, who had fortifications surrounding the island and a jail and torture chamber on the island itself. In a remote part of South Australia lies an artificial ghost town known as Old Talem Town. This attraction consists of many buildings, most of which are over 100 years old, that had been abandoned and then relocated to this town. There's a massive mix of history and dark events tied to many of these buildings, and some of them are considered to be, of course, haunted. One of the buildings that has gained a reputation for being possibly the most haunted building in Old Talem Town is its church. The Wolseley Methodist Church is feared as countless visitors to the building have claimed to have weird experiences. These include strange sensations, sighting shadow people, and even interacting with a young boy who is thought to have drowned on the property many years ago.
Coming in at number 5, Mirror Mirror. Back in 2017, a now deleted Reddit account shared a spooky encounter from when they were about 11 or 12. According to the user, they were staying with their grandparents, and although they loved staying there, there was one very unfortunate bit. Their spare room was in the basement. According to the user, every time they stayed over, stranger and stranger things started happening. Things began flying across the room, objects would move from where they had last left it, and they would even find crumbs from snacks that they didn't eat. But most terrifying of all were the messages left on the mirror in the middle of the night. One night they saw something that particularly spooked them, and they went up to the mirror to get a closer look. In the mirror's reflection, they saw something behind them, but when they turned around, nothing was there. They looked back into the mirror to see the sheets moving behind them, and thankfully they had the smarts to get the hell out of there. From there on out, they slept on the couch when they visited their grandparents, as it was clear something had already decided the guest bedroom belonged to them. Coming in at number 4, Annalise Michael. A truly tragic story from 1975, Annalise Michael is one of the most well-known stories of demonic possession to this day. She grew up a devout Christian, but strangely one day when she was 16, she passed passed out, and when she woke up, she was never the same again. Originally, she was diagnosed with epilepsy and depression after a series of terrifying convulsive episodes. However, Annalise believed she was possessed, and her family began looking for alternate methods to heal her, ceasing to take all prescribed medications. After a long search with many turning them down, they found a priest who agreed to perform exorcisms on her, and in fact ended up performing a whopping 67 sessions over 10 months. During one of the exorcisms, a demon spoke through Annalise saying, "People are stupid as pigs. They think it's all over after death. It goes on." As the months went by, she stopped eating as the demons instructed her and eventually died of malnutrition. The priests involved were ultimately convicted with manslaughter and condemned for encouraging the young woman to stop her medication in the first place. Next up at number 3, a Ouija board. While on an overnight school trip to a haunted house, one girl says she received a bone-chilling message from a spirit. Now, I'm not sure exactly whose idea it was to take a group of young girls to a haunted house as a school trip, but alas, here we are. According to the girl, somewhere around 4 p.m. they decided to try out a Ouija board, and I mean, what could go wrong there? She claims they spoke to a girl who died in the 1800s, and when they asked the spirit to show herself, it simply replied saying 11:35. Jump ahead a few hours, and at exactly 11:35, the teacher saw a girl standing in the window staring right at her. The lights flickered and a constant loud knocking was heard all over the house. They asked the board if it was her, to which it replied yes. The next morning, they were all really freaked out about what had happened, but thought it was all behind them. That was until they found the house scattered with notes all torn from the teacher's notebook that read, "Come back soon." The girls booked it out of there and never returned. Coming in at number 2, a visit from the grave. In 1977, the Chicago Fire Department was called to put out a fire at an apartment. Once they were able to put out the flames, they were horrified to find the body of Teresita Bassa, a 47-year-old woman, under her mattress with a knife through her chest. There were no signs of forced entry, and so eventually the case just went cold. That was until one night when Remy Chua, a co-worker of Bassa at the hospital, was visited by her ghost in a dream. Chua said Bassa revealed the face of her killer and that it was another hospital employee named Alan Showery. From there, Chua says she began to be possessed by Bassa, and using Chua as a vessel, the entity said, "Tell them Al came to fix my television and then he killed me." Eventually they were able to convince authorities to take another look at the case, and Alan was indeed eventually charged with 22 years in prison for killing Teresita. So maybe not a demon leaving a message, but certainly a message from the beyond, no less. And last up in our number 1 spot, haunted toys. One couple named Mark and Marianne say that they experienced one of the most terrifying moments in their lives when one night, for whatever reason, a demon attached itself to some of the toys belonging to their son. The toys began moving around the room almost as if they were dancing with each other, when suddenly they would start hurling towards the couple out of nowhere. Soon the entity took over a magnetic doodle board and began leaving threatening messages saying, "Die, die, you're dead," and RIP. As the demon continued, it began taking over their computer, sending vulgar and untraceable emails to the couple promising Marianne that "I'll come for you when you're asleep" and that she was going to die today. Maybe most terrifying of all was when they would be out of the house. Marianne would get phone calls that when she answered were completely silent, but the source of the call was their landline inside their locked and empty house. The nightmare continued for nearly a year until one day, out of nowhere, it stopped completely and never returned again. Thank God.
Starting us off in at number 10, Stop Watching Me. Two brothers discovered a scary secret when they went exploring into an unoccupied home. They found themselves in a wet, dirty basement surrounded by these messages. The two brothers got a bit more than they bargained for because some of these messages will send chills down your spine. There were some rules written on the wall that said 1. Stop reading your walls. 2. No watching Isaiah through the hole. 3. No writing or drawing on the walls. 4. If you don't like these rules, go back to number 1. But that's not the scariest part. Another message said stop watching me. I mean, what the heck went on in this house? Was someone locked in this creepy basement? And who is he watching through the holes? If only the walls could talk. Scary messages found in a time capsule brings us to number 9. A demolition crew in Albuquerque, New Mexico discovered a time capsule dated all the way back from 1968. The capsule came from an elementary school, but apparently some kids from the late 1960s had some pretty disturbing predictions for the future. But things took a turn for the worst when they pulled out this note. Some disturbed kids wrote, "I am dead. I was born in the 1900s. You ought to know that I am dead. My favorite subject is spooking the police. I play the guitar. In case you don't know what that is, it's a board with strings on them. I'm 10 years old. See you later, savages." Is anyone else completely freaked out? I think they should fold that letter back up and put it into the dirt where they found it. I wonder if the person who wrote this is still alive. Or maybe they were a guitar-playing ghost who haunted the elementary school. Either way, the people who uncovered this time capsule are probably being haunted by his spirit now. This is why we should leave things where we found them. Next up, number 8, scary message written in an insane asylum. Take a look at this message. This person wrote, "It was more fun in hell." Well, I guess this institution didn't get very good reviews on Yelp. All jokes aside, there's just something so unsettling about this message. It really makes you wonder what the heck went on in this place. Clearly the patients weren't treated well, or this message wouldn't exist. Back in the day, mental institutions used to have a ton of inhumane treatments, such as shock therapy, lobotomies, and they would even use toxic drugs to treat mental disorders. I can understand why this person wrote this message on the wall. I don't think it would be a lot of fun to have a piece of my brain removed, but you know what? That's just my opinion. That's just me. Creepy blood splatter brings us to number 7. If you come across blood splatter, then something serious must have gone down. But if you see a creepy message written in blood, you better run for your life, because that person still might be there. I mean, how fresh is that blood? They might be there looking for their next victim. Take this message for example. It reads, "Cut off their limbs." And you know what? This blood still looks super fresh. And honestly, this message is so disturbing. I would run like Forrest Gump and get the heck out of there. And what's up with the creepy handprints? This person clearly had way too much time on their hands. Sorry, no pun intended. But in all seriousness, I wonder if this person made it out of this creepy place with all of their limbs, still intact. It's time to brace yourselves for this one, because in at number 6, we have a scary note from a child. Let's take a look at this next creepy message. This disturbed kid wrote, "I hope I will be a bloody guy with a knife and an eye patch. When I have my costume, I sneak into houses. First I will put on my eye patch, after I will," and then the message just stops. I mean, is this freaking real life right now? Apparently this kid was writing what he wanted to be for Halloween, but this is oddly descriptive. It sounds like he's writing out a fantasy of potentially murdering someone. I think his parents took this note away from him and sent him to be evaluated. Whatever happened to wanting to dress up as a pirate or a firefighter? When did kids become so sadistic?
Coming in at number 10, we have William Shakespeare's grave. Billy Bob Shakespeare is one of my favourite historical figures of all time for many reasons, but mainly because I loved his drama. William Shakespeare died in 1616 and wrote 39 plays, 154 sonnets, and 2 long narrative poems. My favourite Shakespeare play is probably The Winter's Tale. It's a classic problem play and I really enjoy it, but I also do love Macbeth as a close second. So as we know, the famous English writer had a flair for drama and a great sense of humour. With that in mind, of course he decided to place a curse on his grave. He's buried at the Holy Trinity Church in his home of Stratford-upon-Avon. On his grave he wrote, "Good friends, for love's sake forbear to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be man spares these stones, and cursed be he who moves my bones." Good on you, Bill. You don't want anyone messing with your bones, I feel you. When the church was restored in 2008, care was taken to keep his bones safe. I might just curse my own grave so that I don't end up getting thrown out in the trash. Good thinking. Coming in at number 9, we have the Shugborough inscription. The thing is about this tomb message is that we have no idea what it says. The Shugborough monument can be found in the grounds of Shugborough Hall in Staffordshire in England. The monument depicts the shepherds of Arcadia, in which shepherds stand around a tomb. Now the monument contains a very cryptic message that reads OUOSVAVV, and this is framed by the letters D and M. A lot of people that think that this is a code, and the monument is regularly hailed as one of the world's top unsolved ciphers. Adding to the mystery, fingers of the stone's figurines touch the letters N and R on the phase Et in Arcadia EGO. So what does this mean? Some of the world's top minds, Charles Darwin and Charles Dickens included, have actually failed to solve the text. Coming in at number 8, we have the cursed tablets. In 2003, 4 cursed tablets were found in the grave of a young woman who died around 2,400 years ago in Greece. Brilliant. Back in the day, it seems that cursed tablets were very popular, and people would inscribe curses on metal and offer them to the gods. Burying tablets with the dead was believed to give the tablets direct access to the gods, who would then decide to do the curse's bidding. The curses were aimed at then local innkeepers Demetrios and Fangoria. One of the curses found in the grave read, "Cast your hate upon Fangora and Demetrios, and their tavern and their property and their possessions. I will bind my enemy in blood and ashes with all the dead." Blimey. Another one of the curses found in the grave wished a dog ear curse upon them. Of course. From dog curses to donkey curses up at number 7. The Egyptians, as we know, were a scary bunch when it came to protecting their final resting places. Well, it seems that a donkey curse was famously found on the tomb of Der El Bari Graffito. The donkey curse invoked the god Seth, a donkey who would rape those who violated the tomb. We hear a lot about how the curse of King Tut came true, but we have no idea if the curse here came true because nobody wants to admit that they got harassed by a donkey, do they? Coming in at number 6, we have Amenhotep's shopping list. The ancient Egyptians were so dramatic, including Amenhotep, son of Hapu, who died in 1300 BC. In life, he was a priest and a scribe, and a lover of melodrama, I bet. He inscribed one of the more inventive curses that I've ever read on the doors of his final resting place. This curse actually kind of made me laugh. It reads like a shopping list of plague and pestilence. He wrote, "He who enters this tomb will lose their earthly possessions and honours, be incinerated in a furnace, in excretion of rites, capsize, drown at sea, have no successors, receive no tomb or funerary offerings of their own, and their bodies would decay because they will starve and have no sustenance, and their bones will perish." Good! Great! You get a car. No, you get a car. No, you get a car. Plagues, plagues everywhere.
Scary Slenderman message brings us to number 5. Slenderman is a fictional character, or is he? Well, it originated as a creepypasta. He is a thin, insanely tall humanoid man who doesn't have a face. It is said that Slenderman stalks and abducts his victims, who are usually children. Once he has them in his possession, he will either kill them by impaling them with his tendrils, or they will die from the Slenderman sickness, or if all fails, he will remove their organs and tear them in half. With all that being said, this note was found somewhere in a forest area located in Connecticut. It says, "Don't look or it takes you." Although it's probably just a hoax, you can never really know for certain. I'm not taking any chances with this one, so let's move on to number 4. We have the mechanic. Let's take a look at what he had to say. I never knew much about people until I took one apart, just to see how it worked. What is he talking about? This is probably one of the scariest things that I've ever stumbled across. Also, where was this picture taken? It looks like they're in some scary abandoned underground tunnel. Nothing good ever comes from exploring underground tunnels. Trust me. And who knows, maybe this person is lurking in the shadows waiting for another victim to open up. If you intentionally go to places like this, you are just asking for trouble, or worse. A very concerning message brings us to number 3. This message is a pretty short but extremely effective one. Let me know if you guys agree. It says, "Let me out. No thanks. I will not be letting you out anytime soon. I don't know what I'm letting out. You're probably locked up there for a good reason, so I think I'll just leave you alone. if I saw this message, I would turn around and book it out of there in a second. I would just scurry on out. I wouldn't waste time looking for someone who might want to murder me. Well, actually, I should never find myself in this situation because I don't actually enjoy exploring creepy places or old buildings. It's gotta be new and fresh and ghost-free. But that still doesn't mean that I'm not curious about this message though. I wonder if the person was trapped, if he was a victim or maybe a smart serial killer. A creepy message in a bathroom is at number 2. Bathrooms are notorious for having things written on the stalls, but this message might have taken things too far. It says, "We've been waiting for you." Could you imagine going into a public washroom and sitting down to, do your business? But then you read this on the back of your door. And you know what? I can guarantee you that I wouldn't stick around to see what's about to happen. It's already a scary thing to use public washrooms. I mean, for me, I am terrified of it. But this message takes it to a whole other level. You know what? I think from now on, I'm just gonna hold it until I go home. I don't ever want to meet someone who's been waiting for me in the washroom. And now coming onto this list at number 1, we have the Zodiac ciphers. The Zodiac killer was responsible for a string of murders that took place in San Francisco in the late 1960s. He was never caught and his identity remains a mystery to this day. He was linked to at least 5 murders in the Bay Area, but he might have been responsible for a whole lot more than that. He enjoyed teasing the local police by sending them threats and cryptic letters. Despite intense investigations, there were several ciphers that weren't able to be solved. I'm so curious to know what the hidden message was in all of his ciphers. It probably had details about the killings and his victims, but I don't think we will ever be able to crack the Zodiac Killer ciphers, and for that reason, this actually still remains one of the biggest mysteries in the world today.